Hello. So hopefully you can hear me. Someone could indicate if they can hear me because it's the first time using this software. It's extremely baffling. I can see comments on the right-hand side of the screen here. So yeah, someone says, we've started, Pete Malley. So there's a few comments going back. So I could look at some of these. It's really weird when you do this for the first time because I don't have the slightest idea what I'm doing, and there's all these baffling options on the screen, and it's usually if you practice something, you're not doing it in real time. You just practice, it goes wrong, you practice again, it's absolutely fine. That's what I've been doing on YouTube. There's no way to do that with this. You just have to go live and then see what happens. So I'm putting it off because I couldn't. It just looked very intimidating, but I thought, okay, well, I think I know how to do it. Mark kind of shown me, so I'll have a go. So apparently you can hear me, so that's really good, and I can see people's comments here. I can see Martin, Turquoise Blue, Kev, Liam, all known to me. So Jonathan Coe says, I've gained a crown. How did that happen? No idea. Don't understand the system at all, really. So this is my first time. So yeah, I just wanted to do a live stream because I've been promising that I would do one for a while. Hello to Vivian, who's here. And I've often watched other people on Twitch and YouTube, and I thought they're really good at it. I mean, I can't believe how good they are. So I don't know how good I will be at filling airtime and so forth, but I wanted to try doing one and see how it goes, and then if it goes well, I'll do one every couple of weeks. But I will tell you a short story. So I was quite affected this week by the death of someone, not someone who I know, but I did retweet this. He probably won't be known to many of you, if any. It's a guy called Daniel Naroditsky. So he was one of the best chess players in America, and he's only 29 years old, and he very likely committed suicide. And this occurred likely due to cyberbullying. So incredibly, there's this other player who used to be the world chess champion who'd been bullying him online and saying he's cheating, completely unfounded. And he got worse and worse and more stressed. And then yesterday it was announced that he died. And it seems very likely he's taken a deliberate overdose of sleeping pills. So I've been very affected by that over the last couple of days. And I see many parallels with Lucy's case, where there's bullying. It's someone in the prime of their life. The organizations that are supposed to protect this person have failed to do so. So I've been looking at that, and I will kind of discuss that in a video at some point, because it made me think about a few topics that are relevant to Lucy's case. But I mean, truly, this guy, I don't know how to share my screen. How do I share my screen? Can I do that? Very unlikely I'm going to be able to know how to do this. Yeah, I'll have to investigate that at a later date because I don't know how to do it. But anyway, this guy, Daniel Naroditsky, firstly, he's an extremely gifted chess player. You have to be exceptional to be top 10, particularly in the United States, because it's super competitive. It's almost insane how good the top players are. You have to know so much. Then on top of that, he spoke Russian fluently. So I've seen a video of him, and this other player comes and sits with him, and he's like teasing her and speaking in Russian fluently to her. She's Russian. He's a very kind person, very sensitive, very giving, brilliant coach. And for him to have committed suicide due to essentially it's not confirmed it's suicide. He could have taken an accidental overdose, and there may be an open verdict, but it's very likely that he's committed suicide. And I just came onto YouTube and I could not believe that he was dead at the age of 29. And it's just due to cyberbullying, basically. So I found that very upsetting, and it did make me think about a few things. So I'm going to be addressing that in a future video. But I didn't feel like making a video today. I thought I'd just have a day off, and I thought, well, maybe I could try doing a live stream. So I'm going to do that today, obviously. I'm doing that now. And tomorrow I'm going to make a video, and then I'll release that on Friday. So I've got some questions now. So off license, Chris, been watching your latest videos. Apart from her frequent data entries, do you think Lucy was a whistleblower to any of the external reviews. So I can't say this with absolute certainty because we don't know. But if Lucy was interviewed by someone, given that what we know about her, she would have told the truth. She wasn't someone who was strategic or tactical in what she did. If she you know, she is very clear that she was very committed to improving practice on the unit, and that's why she filled Datix in the first place. Here comes Kiko. So if she did come into contact with anyone, then, and she thought there was a truth to be told, she would have told the truth. I'm very, very very certain of that. So I don't know whether she did tell anyone in the sense that you're indicating, but it's a possibility. I think always. I don't think she was a whistleblower in the purest sense. Although I've spoken to people who say that she was a whistleblower, but I think when she filled in Datix, it wasn't to blow the whistle. It was to say, look, we're not doing well. We could do better on the unit. Here's how we could do better. And it's notable in one of the documents from Thirlwell, this is Karen Rees says Lucy would Datix herself. So if she did something wrong, she would say, I did this wrong. Everyone else on the unit needs to know about this. Now, it takes a very honest person and a very committed person to do that. So I think if she would speak to external organizations, but whether she did or not, I simply don't know. Did you check Goss's summing up and the Royal College report? No, I haven't yet. I'm aware it's out there. I'm going to be going through Goss's summing up on the channel, no doubt. So I will deal with that at some point. I mean, I've heard a lot about it because I know the person that wrote the. I mean, I assume you're referring to the Reddit thread. I know the person who compiled it, so I will be going through it. And she told me a little bit about it. Keeks, come down here. Good girl. Yeah. So thank you for the kind remarks from everyone. I won't read out every single comment. I'll just try and deal with the ones that ask questions, unless there's a bit of a lull. Why is it that no one seems to have addresses where Lucy's supposed to have got extra insulin from? I'm not sure if this has been clarified. Now, I was talking to this, I forget. I mean, I talked to so many people, I've forgotten who I was talking to this about. But I was talking to someone about this recently, and I was saying very early on, before I knew half what I know now, I found it extraordinary that in the court case, that either wasn't an accusation from the prosecution, where the prosecution says, look, Lucy accessed this insulin at this point from this location, there was this much missing, and it is roughly equivalent to what would have been needed for these hypothetical things that we've made up in the prosecution case. That obviously never happened. Equally, given that didn't happen, I'm surprised the defense didn't make more of saying, well, where did Lucy access the insulin? You've made no allegations about this whatsoever. I mean, this is pie in the sky. It's absolute pie in the sky. So I personally found that aspect of it extraordinary, because naively 2.5 years ago, when I began this journey, I would have thought to put someone away for 14 life sentences for murder, you might have needed some concrete evidence at some point. And I would have thought the very least you would have needed was someone being able to say, look, she could have accessed the insulin, or she did access the insulin. Look at this audit. This audit says stuff was missing, etc., etc. That's still circumstantial evidence, but that would be somewhat compelling, perhaps, or at least they're trying to put forward a meaningful circumstantial case. But given that never happened, I mean, I think it's extraordinary. I think it's a very valid question. We don't know. I mean, I know for a fact that people in the defense who are working on the insulin cases, they say the figures, the readings that were used in court, in order for those to be the result of exogenous insulin, it needs several vials. I believe it was 6, half a dozen, or something like that. And there weren't that many necessarily stored on the unit, let alone have they gone missing. So it is an extraordinary aspect of the case. I just cannot understand. I can't understand how that can be allowed to happen. But the judge seemingly allowed anything in this case. As I've said previously, I think that's very indicative of what often goes on in court. It's very clear that all manner of ridiculous evidence is allowed to be put in court, and the system's been operating that way for so long. They don't worry about it. I mean, I've said as well. I think increasingly barristers, the more they become immersed in the system, the more they become divorced from reality. So in the end, reality almost and the truth doesn't even matter, because but for the grace of God, they could be arguing the opposite case. So Nick Johnson could have been arguing for Lucy, and he just he would be there ridiculing the prosecution case as it is he's ridiculing Lucy instead. And they ultimately don't care. So something that was mentioned to me once is that, and I know this isn't true of Nick Johnson, but at kind of top public schools, they have these debating societies, and what they will kind of train people to do is argue against their beliefs. So they will go into these debating societies, and instead of giving a sincere view on something, they will argue against their sincere view. And that's kind of training them to do this type of role. It's complete anathema to me. Like, as a writer, the integrity of your words and the fact that you believe what you say is absolutely sacrosanct. I can't imagine, and I've said before, I accept the fact that, for example, when Wayne Couzens was convicted of Sarah Everard's murder, someone has to go in there and defend him and try and reduce his sentence, and that's their job, and I understand that. But nevertheless, I mean, I could never do a job where I had to argue against what I believe to be true, argue directly against what I believe to be true. Maybe to some extent, the barristers convince themselves that they believe that what they're saying is true. But I think generally, broadly speaking, they must to some degree become divorced from reality, where it doesn't even matter what the truth is. All the matter is who litigates better. There you go. The person litigate better won. That is now reality. And then we place the court system above reality. We place realities here, and this is the court system, and that's why you get people like Liz Hull and many others just saying, "Oh, the court said this, the court said this, the judge says this, the jury said this." That's fine, Liz, but that has nothing to do with what happened in actual reality. Now, I should move on to the next question now. What is your take around the record keeping for babies A and B? Clearly, it's very poor. I mean, I'm going to have someone, obviously, probably a lot of you have seen the interview with Dr. Martin Pittman, obstetrician. So this is something that I wouldn't have fully appreciated myself. I wouldn't have understood intrinsically how important the obstetric records are. Now I do, because I've spoken to enough people. It's been made clear to me. It's very clear that the record taking was inadequate for child A and child B. But I think, just broadly speaking, the whole unit, the record taking was inadequate. You actually see in the court case loads of not just one or two, numerous examples where it said testing was supposed to be done, or it was agreed that testing would be done, or testing seemed to be the ideal course of action. And then it just kind of melts away, and you never see any reference to it ever again. So I think, there was three things. There was a lack of testing on the unit. They didn't do a good job of testing things. They didn't do a good job of record keeping, and particularly, they didn't do a good job of monitoring. That's an understatement. And what as another example of something that's evolved as I've learned more about the case. When I began, this was a kind of intellectual thing that I understood. So I could understand intellectually that this could be a miscarriage of justice, but I didn't really understand the medical processes, or I was learning about the medical processes. But the more that I've spoken to people, I've spoken to so many nurses now, and of course, so many nurses posting my comments. I've come into contact with so many nurses, and then many doctors as well. And now I can virtually picture the unit, what was happening on the unit, and what should have been happening on the unit. And I think one of the most critical things, if not the most critical thing, is that what has been depicted as unexpected collapses were actually collapses that should have been expected, but they just didn't gather the information required to recognize that, let alone understand it. So fundamentally, they weren't. Most of them probably weren't unexpected collapses. It's just that they didn't see the signs. And as nurses and doctors will tell you, babies can't talk. They can't really communicate. These infants of this age can't communicate at all. All you can do is look at their signs, and their vital signs, and these measurements you get from being in hospital will give you an indication of what the state of the infant is, and these were missed. Simple as that. So it's very clear that the record keeping for child A and child B and other infants was poor. Let's see if I've got any more. Considering the police have a... Let me just read the other comments out. I never saw incident reporting as whistleblowing. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it intrinsically is whistleblowing. It should be a standard practice, frankly. The fact that it isn't, and the fact that culturally some people don't like it because it shows them up, is quite worrying, I would say. I also think Datix would have been instilled in her as part of her training. I'm sure that's true. So something that someone told me is that during the last year of her training, Lucy was very diligent. So she's doing her third year. She's trying to pass a medical degree, become a qualified nurse. And I was told that she would double check and triple check everything just to make sure that she wasn't making any mistakes. Perhaps because we know that she did make a mistake, which is normal. It's only in this ridiculous case that this is weaponized into some sort of malignant act. Of course, you're going to make mistakes. That's the whole point of having training. So yeah, she was very, very diligent about that. And so if she was told in training, you Datex things when you make mistakes, which is the whole point of the Datex system, basically, as far as I understand it, then Lucy will have done that. So I think you're absolutely right to say Datexing would have been instilled in her, and she would have taken that seriously, because that's who she was. Considering the police have a statutory duty to investigate all lines of inquiry, whether that points to innocence or guilt, can you think of examples CC can give where they did? I'm not sure what you mean by CC. Counter Chester, presumably. Considering the police have a statutory duty to investigate all lines of inquiry, whether that points... Oh, Cheshire, isn't it? Cheshire Constabulary. Considering the police have a statutory duty to investigate all lines of inquiry, whether that points to innocence or guilt, can you think of examples? No, I mean, it's very clear that the Cheshire Constabulary failed. They failed in their duty to do due diligence. They failed in their duty to do due diligence towards the consultants in particular. And as the expert witness who posts on the channel quite regularly has rightly pointed out, it's not just holding the consultants to account as being potential suspects. That should happen as well. But it's also they needed to know the full context of the grievance procedure. Immediately, I mean, at the start of any crime, what's the first thing? The number one thing that comes with any crime? Motive. Motive is the number one thing that you look at immediately. That's why in a murder inquiry, they often look to the family first, because the family often has a very clear motive and they have the means, they have the access. So they're immediately suspects usually. In this case, it's slightly different because these are infants dying in a hospital. So no one really necessarily has a motive in the usual sense, but you would look at the motive of why the consultants are going to the police station and they're so focused and so fixated with blaming Lucy. So that once you know that Lucy's taken a grievance procedure out, I mean, so many people have told me now, and you've heard some of them already, that once Lucy's taken a grievance procedure out, once that's gone against the consultants rule the roost in these places, generally speaking. I'm told almost without exception. And they're not going to like Lucy and me and Nurse getting one over on them, and emphatically getting one over on them. And not only getting one over on them, but that grievance procedure was very critical of the consultants, with Dr. Chris Green saying it's likely that they lied. So they're not going to like that very much. So this was all critical context that I've already covered on the channel and that I've also covered in my book, that the police obviously are paid to investigate but never uncovered. And it's only because of the Thirlwell inquiry that we know about it, thankfully. So I'm sure if the Cheshire Constabulary were here now, they would try to defend themselves and say that we did look at other avenues. But it's clear that there was enormous confirmation bias in their investigation. And it's also clear that they didn't explore those avenues with sufficient, I mean, that's an understatement, sufficient care and attentiveness, to say the least. Next comment is, thank you for getting some very interesting, very well qualified guests. Well, to be honest, it's a real privilege to be able to do this. Let me just have a drink. So when I decided I was going, I mean, I didn't decide. It's purely accidental. I'm doing YouTube. I never planned that at all. I did plan to write a book, and I started to do that just over a year ago now. Well, year and 4 months ago. And when I started to do that, I've got the experience of having ghostwritten many books. I've written some bestsellers as a ghostwriter that no one knows I've written, and some other books. A few relatively famous people, I suppose. And I've written a novel before that I wrote myself. That's under my name. And I knew enough about publishing. I dealt with enough people to know what needs to be done for Lucy's case to get in the mainstream and get a mainstream publisher, etc., etc. So when it got to that point, it had been nearly a year since Lucy had been convicted. And I knew we were at the time when it could come into the mainstream. The Guardian published, the New Yorker had already published, the Telegraph published, and I thought, now, because if I'm going to write a book, it's got to be done properly, and I want to connect with people. It can't just be me writing my opinion down, because no one will publish it, because no one knows who I am, no one cares. So I have to get some experts, I have to get some credible people, I have to get some credentialed people, and I need to be able to connect with these people. So the two things I thought before I started was, firstly, I need to be able to connect with as many of these people as possible. How am I going to do that? And then the second thing I thought was, are you ready to not be anonymous anymore? Like, you've had a nice little life. You just sit in your study doing writing, and then go for a walk with your dog in the countryside and hang around with your friends, and, no one can bother you or pester you. That's not going to happen. If you do this if I was going to do this, it's got to be pedal to the metal, 100% commitment, give everything that I can, do it properly, make it as big as I can, and be willing to put myself on the public stage. So, I mean, I had a little talk to myself, like, are you willing to do this? And are you willing to never be anonymous ever again? And I very quickly concluded that I was, because it's too important not to be. And I thought, no one else can do this. I mean, it could be that literally no one else in the world can do this. Like, I've got the experience of writing. I understand the market. I understand publishing. I know what needs to be done to make it successful. I've got the experience of writing, got the experience of researching. I'm fortunate to have the time to be able to do it. So and of course I know about the case. I'm aware of the case, and other people may not be. Even if they are, they may not have researched as much as I have. So it was all these factors together, and I thought there might not be anyone else in the world who's able to do this. So if you're not going to do it, then that's a kind of dereliction of duty. So I just decided I'd do everything I possibly could. So I managed to get myself in the position where I was connected, and then I've become more and more connected. And I guess now I'm quite well known within this campaign, which is slightly odd, but it's nice. I mean, I've had so much nice feedback, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone, really, while I'm here in a live stream. It's an extraordinary thing when you feel like the love and respect of a community of people, and the appreciation and kindness of them. And it's not about me, it's about Lucy, and it's about this miscarriage of justice, and obviously what we believe to be important reform to the system in this country. But nevertheless, I have been made to feel very appreciated, and it's a beautiful thing to experience, and I wish everyone could experience it. But this has been a very dark cloud that we've all encountered, and the only silver lining for me has been I've met so many amazing people through doing this, both face to face and virtually, and that's given me a little bit of hope in what would otherwise be a very dark topic. I mean, as you know, the people I've brought onto the channel are incredible. The people that comment are fantastic, and I've met so many great people, and I'm so humbled to be in this position. I feel very privileged. So the only thing I can possibly do is give everything. So when you say to me, some people say to me, like, look after yourself and make sure you're okay, and have a rest. There's no resting. Like, I look after myself. I go in the walk. I take Keeks every day. Keeks is just down here. She'll probably come up at some point. She's just sulking at the moment. She's just lying down because I'm not paying enough attention to her. But she's sitting up now. But yeah, I mean, I always I like to eat good food, and I go out with my friends when I can, and I have a few days off here and there. But I've always worked really hard. I worked really hard to establish myself as a writer, and I've been given a privileged position. I asked for that position. I wanted to be able to help. I wanted to be connected with people, and now I'm privileged that I can bring people onto the channel. I'm privileged that I've got an enormous amount of support. All I can do in exchange for that, and to try and help Lucy, is give 100%. So that's what I will do. And really, I'm quite driven. I don't want to use the term workaholic because I think it's a bit of a silly term, really. But if I'm passionate about something, then I just work and work and work at it till it's done. So that's what I'll be doing. So it's a real privilege to be able to bring you these guests, and I'm just glad that people enjoy it. And I've got some amazing stuff coming up. Wait until you see it. You won't be disappointed. Wasn't Lucy there when CQC visited around? Yes, Lucy was in the hospital when they visited around the baby K time. That's correct. I think no. The truth is, Lucy was there when the CQC visited, and didn't the baby K incident supposedly happen at the same time or very similar? That's why you're probably making that link. So yeah, so supposedly I think it may even have been while the CQC were visiting the hospital. Of course it's total shit anyway, so we don't need to give that any further consideration. But yeah, I believe that's the overlap between the two. 3 of the defense experts, the radiologist, pathologist, and insulin expert, agreed with their prosecution counterparts. Yeah, so there were problems with. I've just been discussing with this with someone recently. So I still believe fundamentally they should have brought experts, particularly Michael Hall, into the witness box. Now, Ben Myers is very, very much more experienced with running a criminal case than I am, to say the least. And he may very well be correct, and I may very well be wrong. But here's why I think they should have brought experts in. Take Child C. Child C is a very, very obvious bowel obstruction. It's crystal clear. It couldn't be clearer. You've all heard Colin Morley talk about this. You've probably heard, I think Michelle's talked about it. You've doubtless heard other people talk about it. I know Philip Hammond's talked about it. Other doctors have talked about it. There's been people on the File on 4 program that have talked about it. It's not only is it obviously a bowel obstruction, the infant is demonstrating all of the classic, very distinct symptoms of a bowel obstruction. There is definitely bowel obstruction. The panel have looked on it. They've cited a bowel obstruction. It is obviously a bowel obstruction that's been missed by the hospital. So if Michael Hall would not have gone into the witness box and said, I think this is an air embolism, he would have said, I think it's a bowel obstruction, and he would have very strongly cited all these classic symptoms. Now, of course, Nick Johnson is going to go on there and cross-examine him and talk the shit that he does all the way through the trial. That's his job to some extent. Whether or not he extended beyond the parameters of his job is debatable. But obviously he can't just allow the expert witness to contradict without. He's got to try and cross-examine him. So he would have done that. But I mean, I can't see any way that could be discredited because it's just so obvious. And if Michael Hall could have put doubt in the jury's mind on Child C in this chain link case where they just said, all right, we'll just link all the cases together. You can just, if you think one of the cases she's guilty, just say she's guilty for all of them. It's fine. If you can put doubt in some of the cases, Child D as well. I mean, there's numerous cases where I'm damn sure Michael Hall would have stood up and said, right, here are the facts on this case. There's no way it's an air embolism. This is a joke. And that would have put real doubt in the minds of the jury, and that could have helped. With that being said, once you're in court for something like this, it's very difficult. What you need to do is not go to court in the first place. So there's a comment about why the bags were not retained as evidence. It's just more incompetence. I totally understand where you're coming from regarding the young chess player. Sadly, sensitive and kind people often struggle in this ruthless word. Very true. Very astute comment. It was a devastating thing for people who missed the start of the stream, but I will be talking about this in a future video, so I won't talk about it anymore. I think more people need to know about Evan's views about decriminalisation of sexual offences. It's so very concerning a paediatrician would have this view. I agree. I have purposefully decided not to speak about that in YouTube as of yet, because I just try to stick to Lucy's case. Other people have covered that elsewhere. It's the same with Bonnie Lewis. There's so much to cover with Evans that I just been sticking to Lucy's case. But it's not like it's not something that I definitely will never cover. I may cover it in the future. I do understand his point. His point is that paedophiles are ill; they have an illness, so treating them as criminals is not productive. But the problem is he hasn't really thought of the fact that if you decriminalise paedophilia, what's going to be the obvious outcome? A lot more sexual abuse of children. It's an absolutely, and anyone who commits a sexual act could just try to claim that they didn't realise that they were doing anything wrong. I mean, it's an absolutely preposterous suggestion. It's typical of his always believes he's right, but is actually a very modest intellectual ability. I'm not going to start talking about Wales and independence again, but you've all heard me talk about that, so I'll just move on. The fact that Lucy asked for the police of the insulin bags when being questioned was presented as prosecution evidence that Lucy was telling the police. Yeah, ridiculous again. We might get into that at some point. I'm going to go through more of Lucy's questioning by the police. We've still got quite a lot to deal with. Of course, we should have the entire court case. We should have the entire police interview. But this is Britain, so we don't. I work for a judge on Saturdays, and she did say when I mentioned this case that she knows and respects Judge Goss. I did bite my tongue, as you would. I asked her about the case. She said she thought there was a lot of coincidences. I said that she wasn't even there, etc. So even there, I did try to spread some information. It's very difficult when people don't know the details. That's why it's important to get the details out there as much as possible. Chris, have you had any direct contact with Mark McDonald? So I'm going to be having contact with him. I'll say that. So despite our concerns, Judge Goss seems to be well respected by other judges. Yeah, it's normally the case. It's I don't know, but isn't this the kind of cronyism that's normal, particularly in high society? They just look after each other. That's the way it is. They definitely should have chased the chain if insulin supply, drug audits within the hospital, and documentation on the unit. So I don't understand why. If I was in the defence, if I was the barrister, I would say, right, when did Lucy access the insulin? What's the prosecution saying about that? Nothing. Right, get me the audits. So I was saying to someone the other day, I don't know what you're allowed to do in court. I don't know what you're allowed to bring into court externally. There seems to be this attitude of, oh, the evidence of the court is just so important and we must stick to agreed evidence. We must do this, we must do that. So I don't know what you're allowed to do, whether you just have to argue against the prosecution case or argue against, I don't know. I have no idea what you're allowed to do. But it seems to me that you would be allowed to get the audits from the hospital. Why would you not be allowed to do that? So I cannot understand why the defence would not get the audits and just say, look, there's no evidence that any insulin went missing. The prosecution's not making any allegations. They've made up the bag. Lucy wasn't on duty. They already had most of that. Why not get the audits? I mean, I've said the same thing about Gwen Walk. So Gwen Walk makes some extraordinary statements. So they could have got Gwen Walk's academic paper that she wrote within some marks. They could have had her on the defence can kill her. They can just take her out the case immediately. They can just say, hello, Dr. Walk. Hello. Are you Gwen Walk? Yes. Did you write this paper? Yes. Let's go through this paper. Did you say this? Yes. Did you say this? Yeah. And she should have no choice but to say yes, yes, yes. Okay, Gwen, why are you saying this now then? And I would love to know what she would have said, because she's completely contradicting her own work. And they could have just thrown her out the case, but they just didn't do it. Why they didn't do it, no idea. So there's a few highs. Hello to Denise. Hello to Black Squirrable. Carl says, interestingly, I was told by her, this is the judge, that there are lots of issues. For example, there are not enough judges to deal with cases, all overworked, etc. So I think this is evident from the amount of time it takes for someone to go to court. We know with Lucy, she was incarcerated for nearly 2 years. despite the fact it's a very high-profile case. I saw the other day that the brother of Noel and Liam Gallagher, who's called Paul Gallagher, had been charged. He's charged with, I think he's charged with rape, sexual assault, something like that. Pretty serious. Anyway, he's pleading not guilty, and it's like, come back in 18 months. So yeah, I mean, it's fairly clear that there's blockages in the system, I think. Yeah, Wayne Couzens admitted it all, so it didn't go to trial. So actually, they had a trial. He pleaded guilty in the trial, but they still had a trial. It lasted 5 days. Are all the brilliant people you've interviewed able to contribute to the CCRC application? So I think that it's not something I've really asked. So let me be clear on something. When I know people from the defence, and I may be able to bring someone from the defence onto the channel, but I need to be very careful about this. And equally, if there's people that are saying stuff on the outside, as it were, who are not part of the case, sometimes it's better for them not to be in the case so they can still speak freely. So whether or not they could contribute, they may not want to. As example, Martin Pittman, they've now got an obstetrician, Jim Thornton. Martin knows him very well, rates him very highly. So it's probably better for Martin to be on the outside so he can speak more freely. Do you believe Lucy Letby will be released, and when? I definitely believe she will be released. I think she will certainly be exonerated. So I don't think she'll be, well, I'm certain she won't be released this year. I don't think it's likely she'd be released next year. The year after is a possibility, and the year after that would be a possibility. It depends what happens. It depends what the Court of Appeal does. It would depend on whether there's a retrial. We just don't know what the Court of Appeal are going to do. But I think 2027 is a realistic target, and maybe 2028 as well. I don't think 2026 is realistic, but it could drag on longer than that. I'm just trying to err on the side of optimism. But don't expect her to be out this year or next year, because that's just not going to happen. In a case like this, do we need an inquisitorial approach? So I've kind of given my opinion on that. I think the adversarial system has many problems. I think it inherently leads to a situation where the barristers try to win and try to withhold evidence. They deny that, but there are clearly disclosure issues. Now there's disclosure issues with the police. There has to be an inquisitorial system, in my view. And I'm going to be bringing someone onto the channel soon to discuss this. I also have legal people I'll bring on eventually. It's just like literally for me a case of thinking who to ask first. So yeah, I personally strongly believe that the adversarial system doesn't work in the current climate. Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about this a little bit. It was probably fine back in the Victorian times when you couldn't have some barrister who'd bring in all this complex evidence. It was just, I mean, I've often mentioned the court case in Oliver and Oliver Twist, where Oliver's caught pickpocketing, and they just basically say, "Did anyone see anything?" and that's it. And then they're going to convict him, and then this bloke at the back goes, "Hold on a second, I demand to be heard. This is a disgrace." And because he's like a kind of aristocratic, they actually listen to him, and he says, "I saw the whole thing. He didn't do a single thing wrong," and then he's acquitted. You know, things have moved. I assume, seeing it's Dickens known for social realism, I assume that is a socially realistic trial from 18 whatever it was. Not quite what they do today, where they're bringing all kinds of DNA evidence. You know, now from one of the things we're talking about AI in court cases, one of the things that perhaps people haven't considered is that both the prosecution and defense are going to be able to use AI to build the case from now on. So they're going to get more and more complex, and the evidence is going to be, you know, I mean, I mentioned chess earlier. One of the things that computers have had an enormous impact on chess because they're better than humans. AI is not as intelligent as a human yet, but one of the advantages of a chess computer is you just plug it in, it never gets bored. You just stick it in overnight, and they'll just analyze position. So actually, the guy who was the world chess champion just relinquished his crown, and the reason for that is you have to do so much preparation to play in the world championship now because of computers. And he just said in the end, it's just not worth it. I've won it 5 times. I don't enjoy it anymore. So he hasn't retired. He's still the world #1, but he just stopped playing the World Chess Championship because he just essentially said, well, it's boring. I don't want to do it anymore. And that's what you can do with you could say to a computer now, right, bring up some arguments for my prosecution case. I'm off to bed, think about it all night, and I'll see you in 10 hours. And then 10 hours later, it's been thinking, doing quadrillions of algorithms, doing all kinds of stuff. And so these are kind of things we have to think about. And I definitely believe an inquisitorial system is superior. So this made me when someone said, "Does Liz hold the same court?" I can't confirm or deny whether that's true, but we'll keep an eye out and see if she tells us at any point. I saw Mark McDonald on a short YouTube reel being interviewed. He put a call out to say he's happy for anyone to help if they can think of things that he hasn't. Is he aware of your channel? So my most recent video with Dr. Martin Pittman has been sent to him. So I'm going to be providing some more stuff, and yeah, I'll be involved and help if any way that I can. I recently went to see Professor David Wilson, and the first question, wow, that must have been interesting. I recently went to see Professor David Wilson, and the first question he was asked was, "Is Lucy Letby innocent?" He answered that he was going to be called for the defence. Do you know if that is true? No. Seeing as he's constantly said Lucy's guilty, it would be surprising. That's all I can say. Yes, so another question about Mark McDonald. Well done for all the work you're doing. No problem. My pleasure. Are all the brilliant... So another question about CCRC. So I've answered that. Could you possibly clarify the Dr. A and Lucy relationship, the supposed trip to London, and how he turned against her in the court? Okay. So let me have a glass of water before I answer this one. So let me just give you my opinion first. Let's look at the facts here. This is a gentleman who is round about my age, perhaps a little bit younger. I think he's in his 40s. And Lucy's like mid-20s. Now, you don't exactly need to be like an expert on human relationships to see that it's quite likely that he courted her. If they had that kind of relationship, it is possible, maybe even no, I don't think it's likely, but it's possible that they purely had a platonic relationship. He had no designs on her whatsoever. It was absolutely platonic. But as I'm a man myself, as you may have noticed, I would obviously doubt that to a certain extent, because he's just a very, and I'm not critical. I'm not critical of the fact, some people are, but I'm not critical of the fact that he was attracted to a younger woman. That's just nature. That's life. Whether or not he behaved entirely appropriately, from what I've seen, he did, because they couldn't dig up any text messages that indicated even flirtation. So therefore, he can't have been really, really inappropriate. And Lucy trusted him, and Lucy considered him a close friend. Now, he might have wanted more than friendship. We don't know. I mean, it's pure speculation, because there's nothing indicating that that he did. But as I say, I'm a man. I know what men are like, and he probably had the natural. There could have been a very natural attraction to her. She was, a pleasant-looking young woman, and we can't control our feelings sometimes. That's the way it goes. And I don't criticize him for that. And I understand they might be married, and maybe it'd be viewed as inappropriate. But at the end of the day, people split up, people get divorced, and it's not for me to judge him morally or ethically in that regard. For all I know, Lucy could have become attracted to him, and they could have had a relationship together. And yes, some people might say you should stick with your family, but at the end of the day, my parents got divorced. It's normal. It happens. There wasn't an affair involved. It just happens. I'm sure, maybe 50% of the people that hear, maybe their parents got divorced. I don't know. But I won't judge someone morally and ethically on their relationships and personal conduct in relation to relationships. It's not my place to do that. I don't know if they had a relationship. I don't think there's any indication that they did. In terms of having a trip to London, it just seems to me that this was platonic. I don't know the full details of it, but they supposedly spent time together. But I can tell you this for a fact. If the prosecution could have shown that they slept together in a hotel, they would have done. And they obviously didn't, because they didn't do that. I've met women before who were friends. I've got female friends. I've got one very, very close female friend. I meet her all the time. It's like, I can promise you we'll never have sex together because we don't view each other in that way. So I just view it as, basically speculation. In terms of how he turned against her in court, one could say he was trying to save his own skin. And maybe he was influenced by Brary and Jayram. We don't know. I'm sure that was very hurtful. I mentioned previously that Kathleen Folbig saw her speaking in London, an event at the Francis Crick Institute. Her husband testified against her in court. Her husband turned against her, and he was a central part of the prosecution case. So imagine she was in prison for however long it was, waiting for a trial, turned up to court, and then she had to watch her husband testify against her after having 4 of her children die. I mean, that's tough. And to be honest, he never changed his mind even after he was exonerated, which is one of the worrying things for me about the parents of the children, is that he just refused to change his mind. So he went to the grave. He died recently, and he never accepted that she was innocent. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Did twins E and F have the same initial for the Christie names? I can't comment on that. I don't know, but I can't comment on it. The interview with the obstetrics clinician was very interesting. The point you made about the silence from Councillor Chester obstetrics department is telling. Yes, it's also telling that it's not in the court case, as I showed. Literally, barely anything appears from any obstetrician. One statement and one half of a day was a little bit of discussion from one of the obstetric people that works at the hospital. We're going to be discussing that more. You'll hear more about that in an interview soon. We're definitely going to be going into this more. Martin's going to be coming on again. We're not going to let this drop. Was it dishonest, the reporting around A and B? I don't think so, because you've got to realize this was right at the start. This was at the very, very beginning of the case. These were the first infants. So they had no idea what was going to happen in terms of numerous infants were going to die, numerous infants were going to be unstable, and they're going to have this horrible spike, which I think, although there isn't one singular spike, they did have an alarming number of deaths and an alarming number of incidents. I think that is a fair comment. So I don't think it was dishonest. I don't think they had any idea what was going to happen at that stage. No one expected collapse. It's just the bottom of the league table hospital doing bad work. A pretty fair assessment, I would agree. Datex and incidents are simply part of clinical governance, a quality assurance cycle of medicine. Absolutely. It should be, every nurse and every member of the medical staff should be like Lucy. If that was the case, and I'm not criticizing nurses or even doctors, because, I often emphasize, I don't work in a hospital. I've never worked in a hospital. It's a very tough profession, and I'm not here to criticize people who've done something that I haven't done. But it seems to me that this, as you rightly said, is a quality assurance mechanism, and therefore everyone should be committed to it. And if they're not, that's wrong. Could you go through what could happen amongst all those involved? Prison, struck off, sacked, etc. Wow. Okay, I'll try. The consult. I don't know if I can properly answer this. There's legal perils here. Let me just say this. This is all I can say. Everyone involved should face consequences, but the most vulnerable person is Dr. Evans because he hasn't got anyone backing him up. The hospitals, as I've discussed, is a massive institution, £1 billion institution virtually. Maybe it costs more than $1 billion to build a cancer Chester now. The consultants have got each other, and they're powerful consultants still, but they're vulnerable. The police are the police. The Crown Prosecution Service is the Crown Prosecution Service. The judges are the part of the judiciary. Dr. Evans is just some guy living in, I won't tell you where he lives, in Wales. He's very vulnerable. The Embrace reviews, etc., have all said that there is a culture of hierarchy and cover-up, not to mention blame, which means there is a reluctance to raise issues. So let me just mention at this point that in the year that the Council of Chester was referred to Embrace, which I forget what this is, it's a terrible name, MBBRACE. It's an acronym for something. 21 hospitals, let me repeat that, 21 hospitals were referred to Embrace. The Council of Chester was just one of those 21 that was referred for poor performance with regards to either maternity or neonatology. You may be aware that 20 of those hospitals did not have murder investigations. So I'll just say that. So I've answered this about Lucy being released. Depressing reality is that it's too late for Lucy. The damage is done. Shame on the system that enabled this. So let me just repeat what I said previously. I've seen Kathleen Folbig at very close quarters. I was astounded by how well adjusted she was. So she has seen 4 of her own children die. She's been obviously gone through all the trauma that Lucy's been through with the arrest. God, that is such an annoying feature. Why did Zoom think having a thumb pop up was a good idea? She's been through all the trauma of the arrest, all the trauma of being incarcerated, waiting 2 years for a court case. Then she has her husband testifying against her in court. Then she's found guilty. Then she goes to prison. Then she's in prison. She's in prison for nearly 20. I think she was maybe even in prison for exactly 20 years, but roughly 20 years. She lost everything. Everything. Came out of prison older than we hope Lucy will be. And I saw her at an event, and she was extraordinary. I was so moved by her bravery and her dignity and her refusal to be bitter or blame people. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible, because I know I would be full of righteous indignation, and she didn't have any of that. She just maybe taken a more spiritual path of just accepting it, parking it, processing it, and moving on. And she just moved on, and she just said, I can't change that. I can't change the past. I can only change my future. And she was just, she knows, she would know better than anyone the value of liberty and the value of freedom and being on the outside. You can walk in the countryside, you can go in the sunshine, you can have a picnic, you can have a dog. And I remember I don't follow her Twitter, but I saw her tweeting, "This is my first dog." That really, I won't cry, won't allow myself to cry, but that really moved me, because I know what a dog means to me. I know what my dog means to me, and I have thought, I've been walked around the woods with Keeks, thinking like, Lucy just can't do this. The sun's shining down. You've seen some of the beautiful places I've been to. I'm very fortunate, and I try to. That's one of the things I value very highly, just being in nice places. So I walk through the woods, and the stream will be, how when you can feel water babbling along next to you, it's like quite a primal feeling of relaxation, and I'll just walk along, and yeah, I just think Lucy can't do this, and she could do it. And so anyway, to return to the point, she's been through as much as Lucy has, and arguably more, and she was fine. I don't like to say fine. I mean, come on, that's a flippant statement, but she was as well adjusted as possibly can, and just getting on with her life and trying to make the best of it. And I do think Lucy is strong. I do think Lucy is tough, and I do think she can have happiness and fulfillment in the future. I do believe that. I'm aware of the Sally Clark case. I know she died tragically, but I think Lucy is going to be okay. And I know we're all going to I know she's going to have so much help, so much support, financial assistance. I've got projects that I will work on now that I've got a bit of a public presence. I will do stuff to help. And I think she'll be okay. I do. And part of that, I know, is just me thinking she'll be okay, because I don't want to think anything else. I don't want to think the opposite. But I do think she can come out, and I do think she can be okay. And I know she's going to have a level of support that no one's ever had before. The motive they tried to pin on her was, I can't read that word, from the unnamed married doctor, who we assume was physically, she was in a position of abuse there. I want her to get out with enough time to have her own children. That bothers me. And the fact they don't compensate people. So yeah, I agree entirely. I just kind of mentioned compensation, but I don't think Lucy's going to have to worry about money. I think there are going to be enormous crowdfunding campaigns. I've already got ideas of things that I want to do for her. I don't think she's going to have to worry about money. And of course, we're going to fight for her to get compensated as well. And we'll all be part of that campaign, and you'll all be an important part of it. And we'll fight until we win. The police should have investigated everyone, correct? Accept nothing which they did, believe no one but they did, and challenge everything which they didn't. You didn't quite finish your sentence, but yes, everything you said is 100% correct. There is no motive for Lucy to harm babies, but plenty of motive for the consultant to scapegoat her, correct? That's one of the big red flags in this case that I could see very quickly. Lucy doesn't fit the profile of a serial killer, total opposite to that, in fact. There's no red flags regarding her behavior, and then, as you rightly say, she has no motive. So they should be enormous red flags immediately. So I've been speaking for nearly an hour now, so I should say that I'm 33 minutes behind in the comments. um, I'm never going to catch up. I know Mark will do these for 6 hours and stuff. I can't do that. Um, I I'm going to do it for between 2 and 3 hours, however long I think I can sustain it, and however long seems right. Maybe 3 hours is perfect. I'll wait and see. I also wanted to mention that when Mark does this, hopefully he's okay. I mean, I haven't spoken to him, but best wishes to him. But I'm sure he'll be fine. When Mark does this, he'll get a link and he'll give it to people on the stream, and they'll join. Now, I know this ended disastrously on one occasion, so I just want to make it clear that I'm not going to do that because, I'm a target for people now, and I need to be very careful about what I put online, and I will be very careful about that. So I can't invite you on. However, I will have guests in the future, and if I know you personally, then you may come on as a guest. And I want to get some of the other streamers on, possibly, or YouTubers, and maybe some medical people, maybe some nurses, maybe Michelle or something like that could come on as well. Can you imagine how long it'd go on for with both me and Michelle talking? I mean, like it would be like a 24-hour stream. But yeah, I'm definitely going to have some guests. Not least because it'll save. If I need to go to a toilet, it will save me. Today I don't have that provision, and I probably will have to take a break to go to the toilet. Realistically, my bladder is not what it used to be. I'm afraid I see Lucy's case being deliberately stalled now indefinitely. The establishment won't want it anywhere near a court now. Far too damaging to society and powerful people. I understand why you feel that way, and that's why it's important for us to put as much pressure on as possible, and that's all we can do. We've just got to put the pressure on and keep putting the pressure on and do everything we can. It's as simple as that, but I understand your views, and there is definitely institutional issues, but Lucy has more support than anyone has ever had before. Lucy has a better defense than anyone has ever had before. So we've just got to push and push and push until she's exonerated. Good evening for chat. Thank God for this man and his giant brain. Well, that's very kind of you. So what you have to understand is, when I was 11 years old, I knew that I was never going to be doing anything with my hands. That was very clear. I can remember doing woodwork. I mean, you don't understand. I would be like top of the class for English and maths, and I was literally bottom for like arts, drawing, CDT, as it was called, woodwork. It might have been called back in the day. I don't know what it's called now. We did home economics. And I'll tell you a funny story. This is absolutely true. So when I was at school, in the first term I did woodwork, or what was called CDT when we were at school, all I did was I got a bit of wood from the spare wood drawer and I sawed it in half, badly, I hasten to add. And every time the teacher came round to our desk to see what we're doing, I really wish they didn't introduce that feature. Every time the teacher came round to our desk to see what we're doing, there were like these big machines like lathes around the outside the room. You used to have to queue up for them. So I'd pretend that I needed to use one of them, and I'd go and join the queue. And then if I got to the front of the queue, I'd just pretend that I'd forgotten something, walk away, and then go to the back of the queue again, because I didn't even know how to use them. Mind did I want to do anything. And then I'd sort of monitor. I'd look over to where my teacher was. I can still picture the room and everything. Teacher would be like, milling around my desk, and eventually he'd go over to one of the girls' tables or something like that, and I'd like, all right, I can go back over then. Then I'd just carry on sawing my bit of wood in half, and at the end of the lesson, I'd just put the two bits back in the spare wood drawer. That's all I did for an entire term, every week. And then the last lesson, I just twagged it off and didn't turn up, because I was supposed to show him the last lesson what I'd made. So that was just not going to happen. So yeah, it was pretty clear to me from a young age I needed to use my brain. So my brain is my best friend. And it was clear I needed to do something with that. And thank God I got given a decent brain, because in the last few years I learned how to cook, and that's like something I enjoy doing. And I think that's the first practical skill I've ever developed. So I'm really more proud of that than my writing, because I never thought I'd be able to like bake a cake and make like curries and like Chinese food and stuff like that. So yeah, very kind remark, but bear in mind, I've got about 5 life skills and I'm like shit at everything else. So this case has brought the criminal justice system into disrepute even more than it was before. Absolutely. I mean, this is very damning for the criminal justice system. It's very clear there needs to be enormous reform. Will there be more charges against Lucy Letby? I extremely highly doubt it, but it's possible. I can't rule it out completely because who knows what will happen next? Who knows what the Crown Prosecution Service will do? But if there were more charges, then that court case is going to be fascinating. If there are more charges, rest assured, I will cover it every day on my channel. There'll be a report on it every day, and you'll find out everything. If there were more charges, the periods leading up to the court case will be challenging because I'll have to be extremely careful not to be in contempt of court. So what I'll probably do is talk about historic miscarriages of justice and other related topics. So I've actually been holding back talking about that in case Lucy is charged, because I'll be able to do that. I mean, I'd like to do a video showing you what other serial killers write compared to what Lucy wrote, as an example. But I've been holding that back because it's something I could do if they say, right, there's going to be new charges, but I don't think there will be. Hey, Chris. Hello to ACL Moss. Good to see you. I don't think that enough attention has been paid to Dewi Evans' connection with Dr. Roy Meadow due to similar antics with statistics in the Sally Clark case, clearly cut from the same cloth. Yes, so I have mentioned this in my book, and Martin Ward Platt is another person who was originally going to do the Sandy Bohin role. I don't want to go into that too much because we need to stick to the facts about the Lucy Letby case, but it is important to speak about this a little bit. I do know quite a lot about that. I have spoken to someone who knows all these people, who knows Roy Meadows, Southall, and others. And I agree that it's something that could be highlighted more. And if I can do it in an appropriate way, then I will. Elizabeth Wilson, huge respect to you. Thank you very much. Yes, Chris, your work is amazing. Thank you. What is your opinion on Colin Norris? That also seems an unsafe conviction. So I think I can tell you that I've met one of the people that presented the original case to the CCRC. And I sat with him in a pub in Manchester, and he spent several hours explaining to me why he's innocent. And I left with no doubts that he's innocent. That's all I can say. Your work is invaluable. Never forget it. Thank you very much. I wear my free Lucy Letby badge every day. It gets noticed and piques interest. I've also been asked, are you not worried about being punched? To which I reply, no. Good for you. That's very, very noble. I really respect that. More on Colin Norris. The work Chris is doing to see a change onto protocols on wars and prevent deaths of babies and future weak allegations against staff. I hope that will happen. So one of the things I want to talk about with regards to this is the Birmingham case. So I don't know what I've said about that on video. It's difficult to remember everything that you say. But bear in mind, this nurse was reported on the day that this infant died, the very day that the infant died. So she immediately is in front of the police. It's one poisoning of one infant, one alleged poisoning. Now, let's be generous. That should take 2 months to investigate. It's over 3 years now, and they've neither charged her nor have they said she's not guilty. They've just said she remains under investigation. That is extremely worrying to me, because what that suggests is that they're now looking through every historical case in Birmingham and, oh God, this nurse is present. You don't need me to explain what's happening. I can't see any other conceivable reason why this case is open, because they will. I know someone told me that in the Lucy Letby case for insulin, they had to send away to Guildford. There's no department to deal with this in Guildford now. Richard Gill told me this. You have to send away to Germany. But even allowing for the fact they had to send away for Germany, Germans are very efficient. I can't imagine they didn't send it back in 3.5 years. So they're likely trying to pin anything they can on this nurse, probably. Or alternative, I suppose another alternative is they want to charge her for that one case and they just wait and see what happens in Lucy's case because they're scared they're going to end up in this similar quagmire to Cheshire Constabulary. But I totally agree with Elizabeth here that, you know, there's got to be one of the critical things is the way police investigate cases. We've heard from Stephanie. We're going to be hearing from Stephanie again in November. You can see the difference between her intellectually, in terms of professionalism, in terms of a forensic approach to things, and Mr. Hughes, can't you? Even I think the only person who won't be able to see it would be Paul Hughes' mum and dad, and even they could probably see it. It's just so evident. So I think one of the most important things that needs to come out of this is the way that police investigate cases needs to evolve, and it needs to evolve rapidly. So I'll just keep going down until I find. Yeah, thank you for your comments, Zoe. That's very kind. I'd love to see you interview Dr. Evans. God knows I've tried. So I've written to him twice. He completely ignored me. I will be writing to him again soon. He will ignore me again, and then I'll write to him again a fourth time, and he'll probably ignore me again. But I'll give him 4 chances. But the fact is, he can't come on video with me because I'll just annihilate him. If he would just agree to an interview, I would. Well, I won't say that in case it happens, but I would do everything. I'll get him on video and I'll just destroy him. I mean, it won't be difficult. He shouldn't agree to that. He should never. What he's done in ignoring me is absolutely correct. He should continue to ignore me. He should ignore anyone really who wants to ask him questions, even if they're pro guilt, because he's bound to drop it. He'd drop himself in it. He always does. He could go on the Liz Hall and Caroline Cheatham podcast and he'd still drop himself in it. He dropped himself in it with Judith. So there's no way he can come on with me. Dr. J may have committed perjury with his evidence of randomly encountering Lucy standing near a distressed baby and then emailing his colleagues with a contrary account. Is this progressing? So I don't have any inside information. The police won't say anything to anyone about anything. Obviously, I don't know. I mean, I've mentioned this in previous videos, but they've stopped even posting on Twitter. The reason being because they know they'd be inundated with negative comments. I don't expect that to progress because they would be destroying their own narrative. So I don't think it will progress. I'm a wheel. Oh, that's not related. Yeah, so another comment about Andrew Malkinson and the state keeping Lucy locked up for a long time. What about Colin Norris? More thanks. Thank you for your comments. Very much appreciate it. There's a comment about the protest here on the 7th of November from 12 noon. So I have received your email about this, Mark. I'm sorry I haven't responded. I've just been extremely busy. So yeah, there's a protest outside the CCRC Friday the 7th of November from 12 noon if people wish to attend. It won't be possible for me to be in attendance, but if people want to attend that, they obviously can. So there's a 19 nurses event being mentioned. It's on the 15th of November, so that's being circulated a bit as well. Didn't the prosecution witness state no evidence of bowel obstruction, implying some sort of physical blockage, and left out the bit about there being clear signs of bowel function issues? Yes, essentially. The prosecution witness did state, well, Bohin's, one day I'll have to go through the whole of the Child C cross-examination or interviewing of Dr. Evans and Dr. Bohin. There's a reason I haven't done that. But yeah, essentially that's true. Essentially they downplayed the presence of a bowel function issue, the presence of a blockage. I mean, that's just what they said in relation to that infant is staggering. It's just untenable. Can't say any more than that. Should David Davis and Parliament be applying more pressure to the CCRC? So we're lucky we have David Davis, who is a very principled gentleman. I have enormous respect for him. I know he's doing everything that he possibly can. It's very difficult to get Parliament to apply pressure because for numerous reasons, but the CCRC is not my first worry because I believe they'll refer this case. It would very much surprise me if they didn't. I think they'll do it relatively quickly. It may not be as quickly as we would want. My concern is the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal has done some extraordinary things over the years. This guy they've recently exonerated. The Supreme Court exonerated this guy, Tom Hayes, who I met in London. When I met him, he was waiting for the Supreme Court verdict. And obviously the Court of Appeal failed to exonerate him. So, and that's not obviously not the first time. So I worry about the Court of Appeal, but all we can do is get the best evidence in there possible and put as much public pressure on as possible. That's all we can do. Is Jay Ram still cheering an upcoming conference, or has he stepped down? I don't know, actually. I heard some murmurs he'd stepped down, but I heard that he'd been removed, and someone is saying here that he has been removed. It would be very insensitive, let's say that. Lucy deserves a huge amount of compensation from the system, but it's doubtful she'll get much. Would a GoFundMe be out of taste? No, so no. I think there'll be crowdfunding for 100%. We need to put the pressure on regarding compensation, but I think there'll be a crowdfunding for her, and I think she'll get millions. I wasn't talking about Dr. Hall. I was talking about the experts instructed by the defence relating to pathology, radiology, and insulin. As for Hall, even he deferred to High Marsh on the insulin cases. Yeah, so that's true, and that's a problem, of course. You needed to get insulin experts in there. Evidently, the defence were unable to get insulin experts in there. That was a major problem. It's a real shame. There's nothing we can do about it now. We're just got to deal with the current situation. It's astonishing that they didn't realise the bowel obstruction. I agree. Baby hadn't passed meconium, as you rightly point out. Obviously, 2.5 years ago, I wouldn't have recognised the classical signs of bowel obstruction, but I've been told about them so many times by now. It is truly extraordinary that Lucy Letby is facing a life sentence just for child C and child K. Child K, where there's no evidence whatsoever, and child C, where it's very obviously a bowel obstruction. But there's other extraordinary cases as well, but she's facing 2 life sentences for those 2 cases. It's an absolute joke. It is literally farcical. Let's continue. I'm sure. So someone's saying, I'm sure people would contribute. So I think a crowdfunding thing will be very successful in the future. For your information, Chris, the XP crown stands for experience points. According to Google, it's a measure of audience engagement. The more you comment, the more points you get. There you go. So whoever had a crown, that is the reason why you had one. Sounds like the defence were overwhelmed. Surely some focus needs to be shown on the legal firm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that the solicitor struggled. I think even a more experienced or arguably more proficient solicitor would still have found it difficult. As you rightly said, the defence was probably overwhelmed. It was a very difficult case to fight. They made mistakes. I try not to be too critical of them, but there's certain things they did that I cannot understand. Has Evans retired as an expert now? Yes. Yes, he has, but he would never be hired as an expert now anyway. He's got absolutely no chance. Have you asked any of the Ghana 7 for an interview? Would Dewi talk to you? So we mentioned Dewi. I do have contact details for some of the consultants. I haven't emailed them yet because they will not speak to me. I would be surprised if they answered me. It will literally be a box that I tick before my book is released, just so that I can say I emailed them to ask if they would speak, and they declined because they will not speak to me. It would be very unlikely. Hall couldn't be a single expert on everything. That was an issue. The prosecution had an unlimited budget and pool of people. Lucy had sweet F all in by comparison. It's a nightmare, yes. And of course, this is a problem. This is an overarching problem with criminal justice. It's much, much harder for the defense. The prosecution has more resources. The prosecution can build a case, and the defense is faced with a much more difficult task because they don't know what the prosecution is going to say, and then they find out, then they've got to arrange people. It's harder for them to get witnesses, harder for them to give money to witnesses. I mean, I spoke to someone who's a big expert, who's been an expert in some previous prominent cases. I won't name this person because I won't bring them onto the channel. They're in my book, and it's a world-leading expert. And this person gave me a list of reasons why it's difficult to get defense witnesses. So that's a major problem, clearly. It seems Hall could not even read the warning on the insulin certificate. So the problem is, as it's not his specialism, he won't know every area of medicine. They do specialize in very, very small areas. So he doesn't know. I mean, Dr. Evans, he was honest about this. He didn't even know there was more than one way of measuring insulin. So Professor Hall may have a similar level of knowledge to Dr. Evans on this topic. So he might not know anything about. Ironically, we may know more now about insulin, the measurement of insulin, and so forth, than he knew at the time. Even though few of us, there may be some doctors here, but few of us are doctors, presumably the minority certainly. But we would possibly know more now. We're not biochemists and so on. But just because of this case, things have been highlighted. But he may not have known that at the time of the court case. Hi, Chris. I totally agree with you about the adversarial system. You see that in the behaviour of the police. Absolutely. Looking forward to your new guest to discuss this. So we've got some great guests coming up. Can't wait to bring them on the channel. You won't be disappointed. Another question about Dewi. I'll get him on if I can. He'll come on if he can. I can get him on. Trust me. Let's continue. Do you believe criminal charges will follow after an acquittal? I can't really answer this. There's legal problems. I did mention in one of my videos, I mentioned this thing that I'd seen this film called National Treasure. And there's this scene where Nicolas Cage's character is sitting down with the police and they've stolen the Bill of Rights or something. And he's saying, I don't want to go to prison. And the police officer saying to him, look, the Bill of Rights has been stolen. Someone's going to go to prison. And it's like that. When this unravels, someone's going to face criminal charges. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's not. Everyone that's involved isn't going to be able to say, oh, whoops, what a cock up. Never mind. Someone's going to pay. It's as simple as that. This is what Svelina was writing about, Svelina Dimitrova. We can't allow Dr. Evans to be the scapegoat, just as Lucy's been scapegoated. And I agree with her. But he does need to be held responsible. He just needs to face some consequences, no doubt. But I agree with her that he would be a convenient scapegoat, even though I do hold him primarily responsible. Other organisations need to be held to account as well. I thought Lucy. So Ruth mentioned. I thought Lucy would be released this year, and still think it's possible she could be released next year. So I think, given the timescales of which I'm somewhat privy to, I don't think that's likely. But I will hope I'm wrong. In terms of audits, are we assuming they have a good audit trail? No, we're not. I don't know if they did. They might have had a terrible audit trail, but they're legally obliged to have some form of audit trail. It should be in some sort of coherent state. If they don't have an audit trail, that's a massive. Nurses. I won't get down to these comments for a very long time, but any nurses in the comments can tell me how bad it would be if they didn't have an audit trail. I know for a fact it would be bad, but you can tell people how bad it would be. Amazing number of like-minded people who have joined this live. Well done, Chris. These are obviously the thing to do. Yeah, I'll try to do more. The only reason that I haven't done them is reluctance to deal with the technology, but this is a learning process. I'm learning it now. I still don't know how to share my screen, which I would like to do at some point, but I don't know how to do it. But I know how to do a live stream. It works. People turn up. I can see the comments. I can do it. So I'll try and do one every couple of weeks. Certainly every few weeks. Does Lucy know there are many of us who know she's innocent and are protesting a conviction? Yes, she does. I don't think she can possibly appreciate the scale, but she knows there's a lot of people out there and she's got a lot of cards and she knows a lot of people care and she knows that a lot of experts outside of just her defense know that there are issues. Yeah, so a couple of comments here about AI that I want to respond to. Let's not forget there is no AI, just machine computation. Absolutely correct. It's not intelligent. The more that I use AI, and I feel reassured that it can't write anywhere near as well as me yet, and it's not intelligent. It's just very fast processing, basically. And I think some of the early predictions that are made for AI are erroneous, and I don't think there's any prospect of it becoming intelligent in the foreseeable future. But I've also have seen there's a comment about chess that I'll come on to in a second. So I have seen what it can do. So there's an AI chess program that's called Leela that's entirely artificial intelligence. So the kind of existing chess programs, the other very strong chess program is called Stockfish, and all Stockfish does is calculate moves. So it just literally thinks, right, if you go there, I could go there, then you could go there, then and it just calculates billions and billions of moves in a fairly efficient way because there's programming involved. But there are AI programs that use kind of more intuitive ways that are very, very strong. And when they started out, they were useless and I could beat them easily. Then I could beat them. Then they gave me a close game and now they would annihilate me. So that's what AI is capable of. However, as Frosty Robot has said here, chess is a game of perfect information. Real life and course cases aren't. Absolutely true. But what I would say to you is, let's say, imagine you're Nick Johnson wanting to build an insulin case or wanting to build a circumstantial case. You can just give that to an AI platform and it can churn out information indefinitely. It never says, you know what, you're not paying me enough, I'm not doing this. It never says, I'm tired, I need to go home, or my kid's ill, or I've got the flu, or I'm bored of this. I'm not just here to answer your questions all day. It never does that. It just, like the Terminator, it just never stops, ever, for 24 hours a day, all day, every day, as long as you can plug it into the electricity. And it can produce an enormous amount of information and you can extract the meat from those bones. That's the beauty of AI. That is where AI has positive applications, even though it will turn out information that is crap as well, and it will turn out information that isn't useful. But that's where it can really help a prosecution or a defense. Maybe it could have helped Lucy's defense. Maybe we're talking about the insulin cases and Professor Hall not knowing about the warning. They could have given it to AI. Can you here's a prosecution case saying that Lucy is definitively, or someone has definitively poisoned these infants. Can you provide us with some counter scientific evidence? Maybe they could have put that in court. Maybe if this was happening in 2025, 26, instead of 2015, 2016, and then the court case was a few years ago, maybe Lucy could have had AI defense. Maybe Ben Myers would have said, wow, this is interesting. I never knew this about immunoassays. Maybe we should have had a much better defense in court. I don't know. So Lynn Salter says, hi, Lynn. Appreciate all your comments. Right. So someone says Dickens started out as a court reporter, so I didn't know that. So that's interesting. Evening, Chris. Almost 200 people are watching. I wonder if Dewi Evans and Liz Hull are watching too. I doubtful that Dewi is because he thinks he's above. He obviously, or he considers me to be of no significance. He's made that very clear, and that's his position. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm sure Liz Hull is having a glass of red wine and counting her money at this point. Just reading down to find some more questions and comments. Yeah, so someone said Dr. Trey is 17 years Lucy Senior, more likely to have done the chasing than the other way around. Absolutely. That's my opinion. And of course, that's the natural courtship of men and women as well, isn't it? It's, women tend to get more. That's traditionally the way it happens. Arguably, biologically, it's the way that it happens. And then, a pleasant-looking young woman doesn't need to chase 17 years older men. So yeah, it's very likely. I should say as well that Lucy is shy. I've spoken to people now who knew her well, and she was very shy when she was younger. Clearly, being on the neonatal unit brought her out of herself, and I think her confidence was coming more and more. But she wasn't, I think, a naturally confident person when she was younger. So, and probably she still has some shyness. We don't know about her personal relationships and intimate relationships, but I think it's fair to say that she wasn't enormously experienced in that area from what we can tell. So the idea that she would actively pursue someone, I think, is unlikely. So Ruth says, I believe the dirty old doc was just after an affair with Lucy, but she regarded him as just a friend. Very, very possible. Maybe even likely, I don't know. But yeah, definitely possible. Professor Jane Hutton interview was excellent. I hope Mark McDonald gets to see that too. Yeah, good point. I'll make sure that he does. Someone's making a comment that the friendship had fizzled out. One thing I've learned about Lucy is that she doesn't lie. That's very possible. I do hope that increasing and sustained pressure from public, experts, press, MPs, as well as potential ridicule of our system from other countries might help expedite things so that 2026 is possible. All I can say is I've heard information which, while I cannot 100% indicate that it's correct, it's from a very reliable source, and that makes me think that it's unlikely. So I don't want to be the bearer of bad tidings, but I also don't want to mislead you. So I believe that to be unlikely. But I hope that I'm wrong. I hope desperately that I'm wrong. If I remember correctly, the doctor told the trial that Lucy had contacted his wife. No evidence of that, though. I've never heard that before, so I'm not aware of that. I don't think that's true. Chris, if you sat on a jury, I sat on two, and my experience shattered my trust in them. Most jurors didn't contribute much and based their decision on the 2 to 3 most outspoken jurors. Yeah, so this is a massive problem. So in answer to your question, no, I haven't sat on a jury. So I always cite the Peep Show episode where Jeremy goes on the jury, which you should definitely watch. You should definitely watch the Peep Show episode Jurying, which is in season 3 of Peep Show. It's on YouTube. Everyone should watch that at some point. And Jeremy goes to, so Jeremy's kind of a bit of a feckless idiot, but he's the more socially confident of the two. And his flatmate or housemate, Mark, is like not socially confident, but more intellectually, must have more intellectual ability. So Mark meets him after the trial, like the first day, and he goes, "Go on then, what happened?" And like Jeremy's going, "Mark, I mean, I'm not allowed to discuss this with you. I take that very seriously." And like Mark goes, "I'll buy you a chicken bucket." He goes, "Right, okay." So and then he gets into it, and Jeremy says, "Well, basically, I'm just, there's no smoke without fire, so I'm going to say guilty." And he's going, "There's no smoke without fire. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, she just looks the type." And Mark's going, "Hundreds of years of the British judicial system. This is what it comes down to. No smoke without fire. And she's just the type." He's going, "Look, Mark, if she doesn't do this, she'll probably just do something else." And then eventually, I won't say what happens in the whole episode, but obviously it's exaggerated for comedic effect. But I don't think it's that far away from the reality of what could happen, or probably what does happen, in fact. So your recollection and your account of 2 to 3 outspoken jurors completely dominating the process is not surprising to me at all. You've maybe just shattered the aspirations of your close female friend. No, I haven't. Kathleen Folbig's alcoholic sister also testified against her. I didn't know that, but yeah, this is what she was up against. Very, very tough. I've also sat on 2 juries with jury foremen. These cases were short and clear cut. Already one of my favourite movies is 12 Angry Men. There were 2 characters not unlike those in the movie. Interesting, yeah. Do you think people and the media assumed Letby was guilty because she's pretty and or white? Does this only become relevant once someone believes Lucy might be innocent? Good question. I think it's clear that women generally face more judgment than men, and that can be favourable or unfavourable. So, and that is probably amplified if they are young and or attractive. So I actually watched a video, it was only a shorts video recently, and it was, I think, like a psychologist. It was a very attractive woman, and she was talking about attractive women and what their lives are like. And one of the things I think she said was, they're always assessed or judged on their appearance. And no matter what they do, that always overrides almost everything else. So if they're really, really successful, as an example, it's assumed that that's because of their attractiveness. If they're not very bright, then people think, oh, well, she's attractive. Of course, she's not very bright. If they've done something good, they might get favors or they might get advantages because of their looks, but equally they might get unwanted attention because of their looks. It defines who they are. Now, I'm not being personal about Lucy, but Lucy was a pleasant looking, but I would say ordinary looking woman. It's not like she was a supermodel, but she was pretty and pleasant looking and young, and therefore I don't think that the media assumed that she was guilty for that reason, but her personal physical characteristics can exacerbate the way that people treat her and the way that people react to her. Whether or not that happened and to what extent it happened, it's not for me to say. It's impossible for me to comment. But I think it would be reasonable to assume that it was a factor. So I think the comment you've probably heard people make that, oh, if she wasn't white, she wouldn't be getting any defense. I don't think that's true at all. I think it's very unfair. But I do think the fact that she's is an attractive female, that's subjective, obviously, not the fact she's female, but the fact she's attractive, it can highlight her case more than someone else. So that can be both positive and negative for her. In my case, when I've told the story many times, if I heard this on the radio, I didn't follow the trial. I never saw a picture of Lucy Letby. So I'd already had my half-an-hour journey from thinking, she's guilty, this is terrible, this is really shocking, to, hold on a second, this is a bit fishy, I'm going to look it up. And even I decided that it could be a miscarriage of justice before I even saw a picture of her. So I was fortunate in that regard that my filter didn't include that. But I think it can be a factor, yes, both positively and negatively. But I don't think it's as big a factor as some people have suggested, because I think the tabloids in particular will just sensationalize anything. But they are particularly prone to sensationalizing things to relate to young, attractive women, of course. I've been on a jury and was the foreman. A reminder for others who have, they are not allowed to speak about what went down in the jury room, which is contempt of court. Yeah. Police can say they were misled by Evans. Correct. This is why Evans is very vulnerable. I won't say any more than that. I've seen lawfare on several people, and the lengths the police, etc., will go to. The law isn't the law. I agree. More comments about contempt of court. Yeah, so there's a nurse here commenting about paediatrics and about there having 2 ward rounds and about her having 2 consultant ward rounds every day in her unit. So I've told this story before, you probably heard this story, but I interviewed a neonatal nurse from the United States who didn't know that she knew a lot about Lucy's case and she was brilliant, but she didn't know about they were only doing 2 ward rounds a week. When I told her, she was aghast. She couldn't believe it. She just immediately said, "What? There's no way." And that it's extraordinary that happened, and there can be no excuse for that. It's as simple as that. More about have I spoken to Mark? They will all turn on Evans. He's their obvious mitigation. Absolutely. I have 2 dogs, my fur babies. Dogs are the best. I'll tell a little story about Kiko. So when I first met Keeks, I was still a little bit scared of dogs because I was bitten. I must have inherently loved dogs because when I was 2 years old, I put my hand out to pet a dog and it bit me on my hand. So that obviously had, although I can't remember that had a significant impact on me. So I was getting better and better over the years. And then I met this woman and she had dogs. And I thought this will be great. This will be a great opportunity for me to spend time around dogs. So I'll try and cut this long story as short as I can. It became obvious that Keeks really liked me. So at first she was a bit much for me because she jumps up on you and she's crazy and she's full of energy. And I was still learning to deal with it, having had this traumatic experience when I was very young. So I remember, we were getting closer and closer and I'd throw the ball for and all this. And I sent her off and I was waiting. I said, you go and I'll come catch you up. So I did some stuff in my flat. I came down the stairs, and they were stood right outside the flat. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, Kiko won't leave without you." And it just, I started looking after her, and she just decided that she wanted to be with me. So, and initially, we were going to share her, and then my friend had another dog, and she said, "Oh, we became friends from dating after a while, and we're still very close friends." And yeah, so Keeks just eventually lived with me, and she never looked back. It was a very strange thing, but she just, and then we're so bonded. It's amazing. I mean, I worry about losing her. I know it'll happen one day, and I mean, I'll just be devastated. But I just have to enjoy her while she's here. I never believed anything Doe Evans said from the first interview he gave. Very, very astute indeed. Is there any way of telling whether it was Cheshire Constabulary or the CCRC who advised not to use Professor Jane Hutton? Yeah, it was CCRC. So Richard Gill has given his version of why this happened. It's because they believe the public can't understand statistics. So he was told, but officially it's not the CCRC. You mean the CPS, of course. It was the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service. They haven't officially confirmed, and they won't officially confirm. And there's been freedom of information, and they won't say. So we'll have to wait until it comes out, if it ever comes out. More about when will Lucy be released, which I've already discussed. Is what Evans did and was permitted to do mainly the responsibility of others? I don't quite understand the question. So if you could ask me that question again, I'll answer it later if we get that far. More on when Lucy will be released. You need a team working with you, Chris. I know. The problem is that it's difficult for me to hire someone, given that I don't have the money to do it. And I do have people who've helped me. I've had a researcher who's helped me. There's someone else who's trying to help me with something. I've had other people offer to help me. And someone has done the document for me that appeared in one of the streams, YouTube videos that I did. If anyone ever believes they can help me in any way, someone offered to edit the sound, but the problem was I can't get the videos to him in time to edit the sound, then send it back and then post it. So that's not possible. But if anyone ever believes they can help me and wants to, please do email me, and I'll definitely enlist you if I can. I worry for our parents. What support do they have? Very good question. They've been through absolute hell. It's horrible what they've been through. I really feel for them, and I wish I could do more to help them. They're living in an absolute nightmare. I don't know what support they have. I am going to write to them. I'll do what I can to help. But yeah, ultimately, what can you do? What can you do to help someone in that situation? I don't know if anyone can do anything. But hopefully they've got friends and they've got a support group. My concern is that many people in public still believe Lucy Letby is guilty. Not sure what she would face once she's released. Must be hard. I will do my best to support if I can. I think the possibility of Lucy taking a new identity is there. I don't know whether or not that will happen. We obviously need to do more to change public opinion. It has changed a lot. There's a lot of people that have changed their view. I think the majority of people now, according to David Davis. But yes, you're right. There are still people who haven't encountered the information. Whether it would be safe for Lucy, I don't know. But this is all stuff that her legal team, people that are close to her, will advise her on. I couldn't say what's going to happen, but I'll try and help her in any way that I can. I'm just reading down a bit more. Diabolical to say that you're a target, but very sad. I'm not overly concerned about it. Don't worry. Yeah, someone said something about me. I don't care. I don't pay any attention. I don't read anything that anyone says. I mean, you must understand that I'm completely impervious to criticism, unless it's constructive criticism. If it's constructive criticism, I take it very seriously. The fact is, I know that the people who are criticizing me I've tried to be as modest as I can. I believe you should be modest. I know for a fact they couldn't come anywhere near to doing what I've done. So I just pay no attention. They're not in the same league as me. So it's just water off a duck's back to me. They can say whatever they want. After the trial, you must. Oh yeah, so this is more about contempt of court. So I'll read down. a bit more. Thank you for doing this live stream. It's my pleasure. Who put the shelves up behind you? Well, after my woodwork story, you probably guessed it wasn't me. So you can't tell, but this is one solid unit. This is to be fair, this was an expensive item of furniture, but it was my first house that I bought. So I did furnish it quite nicely, and I did spend a bit of money on furniture. So this was quite an expensive piece, but I love my books. I mean, I gave away. I probably sold at least 500 books to a secondhand bookseller for £10. At one point when I moved, I used to have so many books. So I only have a fraction of that now, but I did not erect these shelves, needless to say. Did someone say cake? Yeah, I do like to bake a cake. I like to do chocolate cake and Victoria sponge cake. I can teach you cooking Chinese food. I'm always open to lessons or recipes if you want to send any. I think you didn't have the best teachers. Everyone can do something creative, even you. Well, I leave my creative things to writing and fiction. I'm not very good with my hands. I've accepted this. But I'm sure I could get better. But yeah, cooking's the thing that I enjoy doing. Does no one know the details surrounding the dismissed juror? I don't know them with absolute solidity, but there have been indications that he was blabbing when he shouldn't have been. I don't know that for certain. I can't say why the juror was dismissed. Yeah, I can't say that, but that may very well be true. During the Lucy Letby trial, was discharged by the judge for good personal reasons. The reason was not made public to protect the individual's privacy. Fair comment. What percentage of the public thinks she's innocent? Is there any polling for this? So I think polls on this topic would be very unreliable because I think polls are difficult to do anyway because you ask 3,000 people, how do you know that's representative? So I don't think there have been any polls done, but as I say, David Davis says 75% of people he encounters believe that Lucy Letby is not guilty, so that's absolutely fine. This is people still talking about contempt of court and removal of a juror, so I won't talk about that. I'll keep going down. I'm catching up. The BBC floated the Liverpool Women's Hospital claims to see the reaction. It did not go well. I think, honestly, they put that in Panorama just because Judith wants to stay on the side of guilt to some extent, and they had to put something in there. So they just found whatever they could. They couldn't find anything of any real substance, so they put that in there. That's my view. I mean, I have a very low opinion of the BBC, as I've said previously. So that's not a problem. I don't think that, there's always this claim that the BBC has to be impartial, so they have to do something to say guilt and something to say not guilty. I mean, I think they're so unbalanced and so lacking in objectivity on so many issues. I treat the idea that they're impartial with contempt, and I consider it laughable. So, what else can I say? Have you asked Mark McDonald if he's made contact with the original defence team and found out why they didn't call any experts? No, I haven't. I haven't asked that, and it's not really my place to ask. In the Channel 4 documentary, they filmed the main characters eating toast and drinking coffee. Anyone know what that added? It's a kind of typical thing that they will do in a documentary. Excuse me. So I'll have to get some more water in a second. So my throat goes dry. Very annoying. I don't know why, but it does. Yeah, it's just a kind of they were going for like the award-winning cinematic film with amazing cinematography. They did some very good filming and editing, to be fair. But that was the only reason for that. I mean, Dewi, as I've said previously, I would be very careful about what I allowed documentary filmmakers to film me doing on camera. if they said to me, why don't you just go and pick some daffodils and fiddle with your grandfather clock a bit, I would be very careful about allowing that to happen. Obviously, he wasn't savvy enough to realize that. So they did some good filming, to be fair, in my opinion, but I do take your point. On first day of the prosecution case, Evans was the first person in the box. When asked a question about being an expert witness, Evans replied, "I call myself an independent medical witness, not an expert." Yeah, that was just him. That was false modesty. He very much considers himself to be an expert. He considers himself to be an expert in everything. So he doesn't actually believe a word he's saying. That's kind of like, it's almost like a narcissist. That was him trying to pretend to be modest. That was his attempt at trying to give a demonstration of what it's like to be modest, but he doesn't actually know how to do it. Stephanie was lovely. My wife is only deaf in one ear since birth, but it was great to hear her story, and I felt we could relate to her. So, I mean, I have the utmost respect for her. She's a very inspirational person, and I know that she's been getting on a kind of even keel in her life, more of an even keel recently. And yeah, she's going to be coming back on again soon, and we're going to have a hell of a lot to talk about, considering what she's going to be doing and stuff that's going to be happening. So that's going to be really great, and I'm really proud that I know her, and she's an enormous asset to us. Won't she receive compensation automatically? No. So I think she has a good chance of receiving compensation because of the high-profile nature of the case and the fact that it's such an egregious miscarriage of justice. However, she doesn't receive compensation automatically because she has to be proven innocent, which is impossible in this case. So they can say, well, yeah, you've been released, but you're not innocent because, it's not possible to prove you're innocent. You're only not guilty, so therefore we're not giving you compensation. Now, whether they would do that, I don't know, but it's possible. So you just have to excuse me for a minute. I'm just going to go and get some water. I'll be back in 1 second. This way. Where's your bank? I'm moving that. Right, sorry about that. What is the best thing we can do to apply public pressure right to my MP? So I'm going to be covering this in a future question and answer session. I think writing to your MP is valid. Of course, they all write back saying, "Oh, I can't do anything," and you've been convicted in the court of law. So if you write a letter to your MP and your MP stonewalls that letter, what I recommend people to do is write back and say to them, "Okay," because they always say, I don't know, there's some machine. I mean, maybe there is an AI machine churning out letters written by MPs, but they all say the same thing. "Oh, thank you for your concerns about this very serious subject. Oh, I appreciate your concerns, blah, 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 blah. Here's why I'm going to do absolutely nothing." So after you get that almost inevitable reply, what you should do is write back to them and say, "Okay, you think my concerns are serious and you think my concerns are important and valid. What should I do? What should I do next? You're not going to do anything. You've made that clear. What should I do?" That's what I recommend you to write back. You don't need to write in that terms. Try and write a bit more, fluently than that. But that's the basic idea. Some comments about Andrew Malkinson and his treatment, which I agree with, of course. And someone talking here about being registered blind, so know what it's like to have sensory loss. It does heighten your other senses, and yes, Stephanie's amazing. So let me tell you a little story about this as well. Cakes, come here. You're running around in a circle. I can't allow that. Yeah, so I actually wrote a book with a guy who was a Paralympic gold medalist, and that was so inspiring. Truly, it was the most humbling thing I've ever done in my life. And I realized how much I took for granted. incredible story where he had 30 brain operations. He could have died, when he was a child. Could have died for any one of those operations. Couldn't walk. Could barely talk, and he built himself up into Olympic athlete, gold medal winner. Worked in a bank, had an MBA, was studying for an MBA. When I knew him, I haven't spoken to him for ages, but I mean, I watched him win a gold medal in London. It was so moving because he taught himself to walk. He can't walk like we can. He was hobbling along. Got in the pool like an eel. I don't mind admitting I cried because it was. I could not believe it. He's only like a second or something off Olympics. He'd batter most able-bodied people, destroy them. It was absolutely staggering. But anyway, he told me this story about he only had central vision. So I was asking him, do you pay attention to people in the other lanes? And he said, I can't see them. And I tried to imagine what that's like, like literally having blinkers. I couldn't imagine it. So, people that achieve great things with reduced senses, reduced physical capabilities, I have enormous respect for. They'll both fight tooth and nail. Yeah, they will fight tooth and nail to compensate her. You're probably right. There's going to be enormous public pressure, though. Imagine the scale. Think of the level of public pressure now. It's already very big. Think how big it's going to be when Lucy's exonerated. It's going to be enormous, absolutely enormous. So let's read a bit further down. So someone's asking me about my book. I'll update you as soon as I possibly can. I could tell you certain things, but I'd rather just tell you when I can properly update you. I will just advise you that publishing is a slow industry. It takes time. It's been difficult, but I will update you as soon as I can. As Lucy, so Court of Appeal more or less accepted J-Ram lied, but chose to do nothing. Fair comment. They certainly have asked questions about it. As Lucy has exhausted all legal avenues, everyone involved will refuse to speak. I'm not sure what that's referencing exactly, but yeah, I take your point. How many deaths have happened at the Council of Chester when Lucy Letby was not working since 2015? So we've kind of covered this endlessly. It's not comparable because they've been downgraded as a unit. And I've also, as I've mentioned numerous times, it's impossible to get those figures because the figures are not released for individual hospitals. So we don't know, basically. Let's read a bit further down. Have I had any contact with Dr. McConville? No, I've not had any contact with Dr. McConville, but I would like to have him on as a guest at some point. He's on my list of people that I'd like to speak with. So if I can do that, then I definitely will. The way the public... Hold on a second. Right. The way the public tended to unquestionably view Lucy Letby's guilt reminds me how the public also unquestionably separate McCann's innocence. Can't comment on that. 100% the defence solicitor's firm should come in for serious criticism. Casey heavily relies upon Dinkit work. Yes, that's true. So this gentleman knows a lot more than me about this topic, by the way. I try not to be critical about things that I don't know, so I don't necessarily know what happened, firstly. And I also try not to be critical about things where they're doing a job that I've never done myself. But I think it's possible that solicitors struggled, for sure. The Court of Appeal accepted more or less J-Ram lied, so we've already seen that. When I was a prosecution witness, we had a volunteer assigned to support us prior to giving evidence. The defence apparently doesn't. It's just a waiting room. This feels like a presumption of guilt. Yeah, I take your point. I mean, I've never encountered this before in my life. I don't know anything about it. But someone mentioned the other day that to me, when I was talking to them, that the parents, the infants, were counselled by a psychologist as if Lucy was guilty well before it went to court, well before she was even incarcerated. So I think there is a kind of bias in that way. It's very clear that the police view a conviction as a result. They think, oh, we've convicted someone, aren't we great? I know they would say otherwise, although they won't say otherwise now because they won't talk to anyone. But I think, as I said, the way the police investigate cases needs to change. That's very clear. They quite obviously. I do think it's kind of psychologically understandable that they start to see everything as a crime because they're surrounded by crime all the time. But they need to view their role as finding out the truth and establishing the truth, not merely convicting someone. That's very clear. Wonder how the parents and families of the babies feel about the surging support for Lucy and the exposed weaknesses in a conviction. I simply don't know the answer to that question. I can only know how I would feel. I would have investigated this, and I'm a critical thinker. I would want to know the truth. But many people have different emotional coping mechanisms. People are at different intellectual levels. People have different personalities with different tendencies, and we don't know what the parents are thinking. I really can't comment any more than that. I'd like to say more, but I can't. So I'll just move on. I love the interviews. Keeps me entertained at work. Someone asked me what I was listening to music or educational. I said, definitely educational. Don't let the blonde hair fool you. I'm sure you're highly intelligent, and we shouldn't perpetuate stereotypes about blonde hair, which are unfounded. No, I don't. All right, so there's more comments about how many have died. Hi, everyone. Such a cup of tea with poetry. A beautiful name, I always think. A wonderful username that conjures up a very nice image. So, hello. Hope you're well. Also, someone's told me how to share the screen. It's a TV button at the bottom with a plus in. Right, okay. So I can do that next time. I'll try that next time. Hi, Chris. Have you met Lucy personally? I'm late here, so you may have already mentioned this. No, I have not met Lucy personally. I have no plans to do that at this point in time, although I'm aware that it could happen eventually, but I don't plan to do that in the foreseeable future. Evening, Chris. Does Mark McDonald know about Lucy Letby analysis, and has any of his team reached out to you? So I've spoken to some members of the defence. I can't really say too much about that. I know one member of the defence quite well. Mark does know about the channel, and I will be having more contact with him. That's all I can say. Yeah, I'm just reading down. I blocked this person. Everyone's saying I should block. So, but this was half an hour ago when he was saying stuff. So, really enjoyed this so far, Chris, and thanks for replying to my comments. Got a couple of questions. What's your chess elo? Have you thought about setting up a Patreon channel? So I'll come back to chess in a second. I have thought about setting up a Patreon channel. It could conceivably happen at some point, but at this point in time, I'm happy with where I am now. I'd rather have 100% goodwill and everyone knowing that I'm doing it for the right reasons than 95% goodwill and a few people thinking, why has he set up a Patreon account? Obviously, as I mentioned, I'm doing this full time. I have actually recently someone offered me to edit a book. So I took that. I knew I could do it easily, and it was a good client. So I thought, right, I'll do that quickly. So yes, I've been doing stuff in the background. I've been doing stuff related to my book. I've been doing campaigning stuff. I've been monitoring my 3 email accounts, messages I get from elsewhere. I do get a little bit involved with the defence. That's probably going to happen more. I'm interviewing people. I'm interacting with people who are in the know and who are my contacts. Obviously, I record for YouTube, interview people, and yes, I edited a book as well. So I've been doing. Well, I haven't finished that yet, but I've been doing it. So yeah, I made a bit of money out of that, so that'll just tide me over. And I'm making a bit of money out of the YouTube channel. I can't discuss that any further. But no, I'm not going to set up a Patreon at this point in time. If there was like an overwhelming number of people saying you definitely should, then I'll consider it. But I'd like to keep the content free. If I did ever set it up, and it would just be in a situation where I thought, you know what, it's a financial necessity, and if I could get a bit of support, it's the difference between me paying my bills and not paying my bills, then I would maybe consider it. I don't know. If I did ever set it up, it would be like, I mean, I wanted to set it up so it's the price for a bag of chips. So it's like £2.50 or £3. Like by the time I set it up, a bag of chips will probably be £7 or something. But, you know, it will be a small amount of money that you wouldn't notice going out of your bank account if I do set it up. I have no plans to do that at present. My chess ELO at the moment is... So I'm 2,350 on Lee Chess. I think I would be like 2,000 to 2,100 over the board probably. So I won't talk about this too much because that's meaningless to most people. But I do a bit of chess coaching as well. So I've coached a few people. I've beat a few title players. So I might post about chess sometime on my Twitter very, very occasionally. But yeah, it's kind of a hobby that I haven't followed too much recently because I've been very busy. Let's go a bit further down. Still, yeah, someone trolls, by the way, just ignore them and I'll block them in future. Is your dog eating the table leg? No, she's having a bone. I'll show you exactly what she's eating. She was eating this. And then earlier she was eating this. But I've confiscated those now because she's being off-putting. But she loves her bones. There's literally, there must be like 25 dog bones scattered around the house because she does love her bones. Yeah, is that your dog scratching? Yes, it was. Why did Myers not call the coroner to state 6 of the 7 deaths were found to be from natural causes with one unascertained? I have absolutely no idea. Why the coroner and pathologist have been overturned and the court never heard this, I have no idea. I cannot possibly give you a reason. It's like I was saying earlier, maybe, I know Robbo knows loads about court cases, maybe he could say, I don't even know if it's a he or she, it sounds like a he, but maybe they could say something about why external things being called into court cases. I don't know if there's an external reason why they can't do that. But the fact that pathology and coroners played such a little part in the court case, if anything at all, I find extraordinary. Extraordinary. I can't understand it. I can't understand why the defendants didn't find out. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah. Yeah, in future, right, please don't respond to a troll because it makes it extremely difficult to read. Yeah, just if there's someone trolling, just ignore them. I will recognize the trolling and get rid of them. It's not a problem. It's not a problem for me. I mean, you know, they're obviously socially inadequate. That's fine. It's not a problem for me. Dogs are wonderful. Yes, they are. I think the expert... Oh, no, hold on. There's still more trolling comments. The police were reluctant to take the case on, but for the dishonesty of Jairam, they must be very angry now that they have learned of his perjury. So we can't say definitively that he's engaged in perjury. Must be clear on that firstly. It's true that the police had no intentions of taking the case on until the 15th of May when Brewer and Jairam walk into their office. We know that for a fact. I don't know what their outlook is. I can't really speculate on that. But it'll be interesting to see. Other people have mentioned rightly that in the Court of Appeal document, the Court of Appeal is critical of Jairam. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out in the wash and what occurs in future court rulings. The CCRC will give a very short ruling. I don't know if you've ever seen a CCRC ruling, but it's usually just like a page long. They won't say very much. But in the future, yeah, the Court of Appeal will say stuff. It'll be interesting to see what they say about Jairam. Will you do a video on the high death rates at Leeds, Bradford, Exeter, etc.? I'd love to get into that, and what failings are, and why that relates to Council Chester. Possibly, But I have spoken to Michelle Warden about this. Michelle will be coming on the channel again before October is out, and Michelle will be talking about that. So Elizabeth has said here that I need mods. So if anyone knows how to appoint moderators, please will you contact me? Just email me and I will appoint some moderators in future. I didn't have a clue how to do that. It just seemed way too complicated. I can't see any options to do it here. So if someone could do that in future, it would be appreciated. So if you know how to do moderators, if you understand how to use StreamYard, which I don't, please let me know. NHS hospitals are not safe places. Blackpool Victoria Hospital has had a series of sexual assaults by staff. A stroke victim was recovering but dies. Post-mortem discovered she died from SA. So yeah, it's very clearly a problem. I mean, there was this, obviously, we just mentioned Leeds Hospital, there's a problem in maternity, but also there's this story recently about £60 billion of misconduct and negligence claims related to the NHS, which is an extraordinary figure, obviously. So it is a major problem. There's clearly big problems with these hospitals. So that's that's something we need to understand going forward. So I'm just going to look at I made a list of comments, or I made a list of topics to talk about. So I'll just talk about some of these comments. Then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and continue from the bottom in a second. But like, I've got rid of the person who was trolling. So, but I don't even mind. I don't even mind. It's just like, it doesn't bother me, but I'll just kick them out in future if I want to. But like, please don't answer them, because it just makes it difficult to read the comments. Like, they're just asking a question that can be easily dealt with. It's not a problem for me. But I'll just talk about some of these topics briefly, and then we'll continue with the questions. So one thing I wanted to let you know, I've meant to put this at the end of a video, but it hasn't been possible until now for various reasons. Usually because I've said too much in the video, or it's not appropriate. Come this side, you keeps. But I've recently, you can't see this because it's in the behind the scenes on YouTube. But you have watched my videos collectively for over 100,000 hours. It's nearly 120,000 now. So that's absolutely extraordinary to get to 120,000 watch hours. It's currently on 118,000. To get to 118,000 watch hours, and I've only really properly been posting since June, is absolutely incredible. And just the level of support has made it possible for me to do this as a full-time thing. And that's, so much appreciated. I'll never be able to thank you properly. But it's an incredible amount of support, and I'm really grateful for that. Something else that I wanted to talk about was the future interviews. So I've got some incredible ones coming up. I spoke to someone today to do a pre-interview, and this is someone that I can't wait to drop it. It's going to be enormous. And you're all going to really appreciate hearing from this person. I'm not going to say the name of this person. I'm going to keep it to myself for now, but you won't be disappointed. Something else I wanted to say is that I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning that Dr. Margaret Ferguson commented in my comments today, and she's the wife of Dr. Colin Ferguson. She comments occasionally, and I know her reasonably well, and I know her husband reasonably well, so that's how I know that it's legitimate, etc., etc. So if you might see her comment occasionally. She worked in pediatrics and then general practice. She's very knowledgeable. I also don't mind saying that she's helped me by fact checking my book, and other people have fact checking my book. I've had one person from pediatrics, going to have neonatologist fact checking it, biochemist, endocrinologist, statisticians, nurses, neonatal nurse. This will be fact checked as much as it can possibly be checked. Kiko, will you come here, please? You can't run around in a circle like that. You have to lie down there. Go on, lie down there. It's not. I did. I ran you into the ground today, don't you? You do know that. Then I took you out. We got to the sandwich shop. I got you a sausage. I wangled you a sausage for free again from that sandwich shop. Then I brought you home. Then I got down on the floor and played with you. You can't possibly. I've done everything I can for you. I can't do any more. Um, so we went to this sandwich shop, and they always give you the free sausage. So, and like Keeks won't leave without getting one. So, so I'll go back to the comments now. Oh yeah. So let me tell you one other thing as well. I'll go back to roughly 9 o'clock, wherever we are. But yeah, something else I want to tell you is that someone has looked at the full court case and calculated how many days the court case actually took, and it was 115 days. So so you talk about it being 10 months, and I estimate it might be 200 days, 220 days. It's actually 115 days for various reasons. So at some point, I'm going to go through the whole court case and show you how much medical evidence there actually was in the court case out of these supposed 10 months. So it makes it sound like there was 300 days of constant forensic evidence. And then I'm going to break it down and show you how little there actually was. And then I'll show you what percentage was actually Dr. Evans as well. So I'm going to do that at some point. So I'll go back to the questions now. So I'm on 9 p.m. Apologies to Chris. I agree the goat was probably trolling, but it's not a good look to block someone for having opposing views. I agree. And I've tried really hard not to do that, but it's becoming impossible for various reasons. So, I believe in absolute free speech, and I've tried to be as respectful of that as possible. But if people want to put forward the opposing view, they're welcome to settle their own platform. And if they think they can make the platform as big as me, good luck to them. So there's a question here about whether I'm going to do an audiobook. Yes, there definitely will be an audiobook for sure. I won't be, it's very unlikely that I will be reading the audiobook. If I can possibly get out of that, I definitely will, because that is a very challenging, demanding job to do. However, if I'm required, I suppose I'll do it, but it would be much better to have someone with a mellifluous voice who's used to doing that kind of thing. But yeah, there will definitely be an audiobook. There may be neonatal deaths in the stillbirth figures for 2017 and 2018. The figures are highly suspect when compared with percentages of total deaths for other years. So yeah, this neonatal unit was experiencing a lot of stillbirth issues as well. They clearly have problems in maternity, and it's also very clear that across the NHS there are endemic problems in maternity. That's very clear. That's undeniable, frankly. It's now very difficult to get any meaningful evidence from the hospital because the hospital has drawn a veil around itself. As I've mentioned in previous videos, in case you haven't seen this, I've drawn this analogy about football clubs. So a hospital is kind of a local business in a way. It's a big financial commercial entity. And it's only in London, Manchester, and Liverpool where it's Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, and Liverpool that are bigger in size and revenue and kind of commercial value than a hospital. In almost every other town, and certainly even in Birmingham, the second biggest city in the country, the hospital will be bigger than Aston Villa Football Club based on the figures that I've seen. So in most towns and cities, well, in every town and city, possibly with an exception of London, a hospital is an enormously powerful entity, and the only things that are bigger are banks and corporations. And in some places, there might not. Well, I suppose there's a bank in every town, but a hospital is an enormously powerful institution, an enormously large commercial entity. So in Chester, a small town like Chester, that has a very small football club that I don't think is in the Football League at the moment. A hospital is enormous. It's the biggest local institution by absolutely miles. So they can draw a veil around everything that happens in the hospital. So as soon as there's controversy about Lucy's case, they just batten down the hatches and they say to the staff, don't talk to anyone, don't go in court, which is we know they've done. Thankfully, there's a whistleblower who's told us this happened. But yeah, that's a very it's clear that there were major problems at the hospital, but finding out the extent of them and finding out what happened and finding out the truth now is very difficult because they won't allow that. yeah, so we're just going down a bit more. Can I ask about the agreed facts of the original trial? Who and what was decided at this coming together of prosecution and defence? And were NHS lawyers present, do you think? This has always bothered me. So no, there weren't NHS lawyers present. It's just the defence and the prosecution, as far as I understand it. Obviously, I'm not privy to that, and I wasn't present. But as far as I understand it, it will just be the prosecution lawyers and the defence lawyers. In terms of who and what is decided, there is to some extent a need for this, because otherwise the defence's job becomes even harder. So if the prosecution was allowed to bring literally anything into the court case, then the job of the defense becomes enormously difficult. It's only because, I mean, it is a legitimate thing to do to kind of limit the scope of what the prosecution can talk about. So in that sense, the agreed facts is a reasonable thing to do. It doesn't sit happily with me that the defense goes in there and says, oh, well, you're allowed to say this, you're allowed to say that, we won't bring this up. I would want to go in there and get, be as bolshy as possible, but that's why I would never elevate to the position of a major barrister, because you've got to play the system. You've got to be a yes man or a yes woman. People that are known to be problematic and people that are known to be troublesome will not survive in any system. It's one of the problems of organizations. Another problem with organizations is that the most intelligent people don't rise in them because people can't understand their ideas. This is a massive problem for the most gifted people, is that we don't allow them to gain positions of influence because they're egotistical. I mean, firstly, their ideas aren't understood, and then there are egotistical people in those organizations that block them. So, and there are people that are already in high positions who feel threatened by them. So that's why we have I'm not here to talk politics, but there are certain people in the world who are in positions of political influence who we may not have a high opinion of, and we wonder how it happens. Actually, the organizational reasons for that are well known. Obviously, in politics, you have to convince people that are not intelligent. So actually, you don't convince them both organizationally and in terms of the ballot box with the most high quality arguments, because they can't understand the most high quality arguments. But anyway, that's always an issue in any organization. I don't know what the agreed facts were. I don't know what the process is, but I think that this is a much more, shall we say, cozy process than it probably should be, in my opinion. So there's a comment about how to give moderators. So if you could email me that information, please, that would be appreciated. Yes, I blocked someone. The coroner and the pathologist would have found evidence of malfeasance if there was any. It's what they do. Absolutely true. So some of the allegations that are made in this court case, which are extraordinary, like we know, one of the things that's very important to point out is that one of the coroners, I forget if it was a coroner or a pathologist, but it's in the Thirlwall documents, they're pointing out there's no frothy blood, so therefore no evidence of air embolism. So frothy blood, I believe it's in the right ventricle of the heart, is a key indicating factor for a major air embolism. So you can have a small bubble of air, but it won't create frothy blood. And therefore, if it's a small bubble of air, it poses no threat to the infant. So actually, it'd be extraordinary if there was a big bubble that across this number of infants. Even that is quite extraordinary, because usually it just doesn't happen. There can be air present, but usually it can be life-threatening, but it really doesn't happen very often, because usually it needs to be a lot of air. It's difficult for a lot of air to get in. So therefore you don't create a big bubble, and it's just the body deals with it, or, it's just not a satisfactory amount to destabilize the patient. So this comment indicating that there was no frothy blood is very important, and I've cited it on the channel. I've cited it in my book. And you're absolutely right. The coroner and pathologist would have identified these issues. They would have found evidence of malfeasance, and they didn't. And the reason for that is there isn't any. So there's a comment here: you absolutely deserve that amount of watch hours, which is very kind. But the fact remains that without your support, it's just not possible. I mean, I'm very grateful that this has taken off and that I'm in the position I'm in now. It wasn't planned. And if you don't turn up and watch, and if you don't support me, and if you don't give me the appreciation that you have, then it's not possible. So I'm very grateful for that. I think many in this chat eat trolls for light snacks. I mean, it's very easy, of course. If you want to do it on, if you want to do it on Twitter, that's entirely up to you. Please try not to do it here because it makes the comment very difficult to read, as I've just found out. But I'll try to have moderators in future. If trolls are just saying, like, it's a legitimate question to ask, how many deaths were there after Lucy was removed from the unit? That's a legitimate question. I'm happy to answer that question. But I think that questions about, I mean, obviously I can answer those questions very easily, but if there's disrespectful comments or people are rude to people in the chat, I won't accept that. I just block this particular person, not because I object to what they said, but because I can't read the comments, and that's the foundation of what we're doing. So yeah, please don't, try to bury or immerse someone, even though I know you're well capable of doing it, obviously. Could you have any respected pro-guilter on? No, I can't, because that's not possible, because there isn't a respected pro-guilter. I have discussed this previously. There isn't a single person with any credentials or credibility who's come forward. I would be delighted to have anyone who is pro-guilt, who has any credibility or any qualifications, any experience. That person doesn't exist. By the way, if there is someone who wants to come on, who has any qualifications to speak about this topic whatsoever, any credentials, any experience in healthcare, anyone that's seen a scalpel before, then I'm very happy to have them on. But please bear in mind, I won't interview them because they outrank me immediately. I don't claim to be an expert. I'm not an expert. What I will do is I'll get on obstetricians, pediatricians, neonatologists, statisticians, got biochemists, endocrinologists, and I'll have a panel, and we'll see how you get on against that. And I'm perfectly happy for you to do that, and we won't be rude to you, and we won't be disrespectful, and we won't be discourteous, but I will assemble a panel to interview you, and we'll see how you stand up against them. If you want to come on and do that, if you're a pro-guilt person and you think you can stand up against that, then please contact me. My email address is lucy_letby_analysis@mail.com. It's on my YouTube. Please feel free to send me an email, and you can come on the channel, and I'll put you up against the panel, and we'll see how much you know. Cognitive dissonance is real. They have decided, so everything can be tested. Absolutely true. Cognitive dissonance is a massive problem. Most people that are still saying that Lucy's guilty, they either have cognitive dissonance or they're just too immature to admit the fact that they're wrong. It's as simple as that. They don't. Obviously, some are just kind of stupid people who don't have any maturity. But I mean, I don't pay any attention to them. I literally don't read a single word that they say. It's just not a worthwhile usage of my time. So it doesn't bother me if people troll. It's not something I've answered a few comments. I mean, in the YouTube comments, you guys will answer them. That's great. That's not a problem. I will occasionally answer a question. I must say, Leslie is a nice person. I like Leslie. Leslie's all right. I've got nothing against her. And I've said I would meet her if she, I've not got a problem with her. I absolutely disagree with her. But I don't bother with people who are just being difficult or rude. And if people are rude, I'm going to block them from now on, because I don't mind people being rude about me. I'm impervious to criticism. Name calling is just sticks and stones. It's never going to hurt me. It means nothing to me. I went to a comprehensive school in the 80s. It was brutal. There's nothing anyone could say to me that's going to have any impact on me whatsoever. I'm very fortunate in that respect. But yeah, I will probably block people more often in future. So I think that what I mentioned at the start of this stream about the chess player who was sadly died at the age of 29, very likely committed suicide. I want to make a comment about that. I'm not going to make a comment about that today, but I want to make a comment about that in a future video. It's not in relation to me because there's no problem for me. There's no way anyone can hurt me. I don't give a shit what anyone thinks about me. But I do want to make a comment about that because I've seen the damage that comments can do, and I do want to comment about that in relation to Lucy's case. Lucy Letby was always innocent. You're doing an amazing job, Chris. Thank you very much. So I forgot to answer the question about Jonathan Sumption, Lord Sumption, the legal expert. So if I can interview him, I definitely will. He's a difficult person to contact because he's of the generation who doesn't give a crap about social media, and God bless them. If only social media didn't exist. But we have seen with Lucy's case the advantages of social media, and it does have very useful applications with regard to campaigning and grassroots activism and such like, and that's the advantage of it. But he's not the easiest person to contact. But if I can get him on, I definitely will, and I'm going to try. I've got a few avenues to contact him, so I'll try. I would love for you to interview Lucy's friend Dawn Howe, Chris, if she agreed to it. So obviously, I need to be very sensitive about this. If I can, I don't know if I should even ask her. I don't know if I should even ask her, given what I know she's already been through. But I'll give it some thought anyway. I think Dawn is brilliant. I've seen her speak. She was so eloquent. She's so brave and so strong, and I have nothing but respect and admiration for her. I'm just sensitive to what she's been through. Do you think when Lucy's released, you'll interview her sometime in the future? It's impossible for me to predict that. I couldn't possibly say. I don't know. Let's concentrate on getting her out, and we can see what happens after that. There is evidence to suggest Brewery and Jairam may both have caused deaths and may have lied in court. Why are they still being allowed to practice? So I don't know what their situation is currently. I can't really comment on this because I don't know what is happening and I don't know why it's happening. But basically the situation is the legal system has decided that Lucy Letby killed infants and Lucy Letby attempted to kill infants. So they are being treated as innocent until proven guilty, which is probably correct. Although I understand the controversy. I understand. It can't exactly inspire with confidence to see them in the pediatric or neonatology department, but it's also innocent until proven guilty in this country, or it should be. Please, can you ask Mark Mays to do the audiobook? So I would have minimal say into who did the audiobook, probably. I will leave it to the publisher. So there's a few comments then. Are you the biggest pro-Letby YouTuber? I wouldn't describe myself as a pro-Letby YouTuber. I would describe myself as someone who's passionate about injustice, who focuses on the Lucy Letby case, because I believe that to be an incredible miscarriage of justice. As to whether I'm the biggest, it's not for me to say. The lack of a defense is an intrinsic part of the legal system unless you are rich, correct? So what was I thinking about today? Where someone's got, I know what I was thinking about. I was thinking about Manchester City and their 115 charges. So if people don't know and don't follow football, Manchester City are facing an enormous legal case that's dragged on and on. And because Manchester City are owned by people that have the ability to print money virtually, they can get a very good legal team together. So I was just thinking, if Lucy had that legal team, there is no way she'd have gone to prison. Because I have no... Actually, I can't say that. I can't say that. You're just absolutely correct. Your comment about if you have wealth, then the legal system is very different for you is I think, undeniable. Yeah, I tend to agree with you about Dewi Evans. I certainly don't get the vibe that I like from him. But the main thing, regardless of his personality, the main thing that we should focus on is that his work in this case has been abysmal. That's the most generous thing that I can possibly say. So comment about would I invite Mark on? So as Mark is taking a break, I certainly won't do that at the moment. We've kind of agreed that I will appear on his podcast if he's in the public domain. So if Mark is in the public domain and I'm around and he goes live, I'll try and help out with that. At the moment, it's not really possible. The Countess of Chester has been in the headlines again for a man wearing a woman's ID. Yeah, that's absolutely true. So this was a major mistake. So something I wanted to mention briefly while we're on this topic is I don't want to fall into the trap of just bashing the main players in this case. So that's partly why I haven't talked about Evans and the paedophile thing. It's partly why I haven't. I'll talk about when it's relevant, of course. And I believe that I mentioned the position in the league table. That's relevant. It's important for us to know that. I don't want to just sit here and bash the Countess of Chester Hospital because, firstly, it's not relevant. Secondly, I know people who've worked at the Countess of Chester Hospital. And thirdly, I'm sure there are people still working there who are trying the best that they can for the people of Chester. So I don't want to just bash them, but yes, I did see that story and that was quite embarrassing for them. I wonder if Lucy would want to do it and not be allowed. It would give us something to do that's different from whatever normal. So there's no prospect of me interviewing her in prison, that's for sure. And I'm not gonna go and see her in prison at this point in time. It may happen in the future, but that's not going to happen for quite some time for reasons that I won't go into on stream. So James has written here, Nadine Dorries, Jeremy Hunt, Peter Hitchens, David Davis are all prominent doubters, more guest ideas for your channel. So of those people, I would be very unlikely to get Jeremy Hunt because of his position. Peter Hitchens is possible. I may ask him. He's on my list, and I may ask him at some point. Yeah, it's possible. It depends on if he wants to do it. Same with Nadine. I do know someone that knows Nadine, so I may ask her. Again, I'd be very happy to have her on. What I'm trying to do for these very high-profile people is build up a reputation and do as many interviews as I possibly can, so that when I approach them, I can say, "Look, I've interviewed all these people. Would you feel comfortable in coming on my channel?" Because at the moment, although I'm enormously grateful for 3,600 subscribers, that there's someone who's an enormous YouTuber I would like to have on. You may be able to guess. I'd like to be in a position to say, "Look, I've done all this. I've done this, and this. I've interviewed all these people. I'm a credible voice in this space because I'm a pipsqueak on YouTube compared to him." So I'm trying to build myself up before I go to these very prominent people. Lord Sumption as well. And then they'll see, okay, wow, this guy has done a fair bit. So yeah, some of those people are possible. We'll see. I'm intrigued to know if you have any thoughts on the announcement of another independent inquiry into maternity and neonatal care. So as I've mentioned, I've discussed this with Michelle. Michelle will speak about this during our interview. It will be airing next week at some point. My thoughts, my unqualified thoughts, are that it's not hugely surprising given I think we can all see, if you've lived in this country long enough, I've lived here all my life, over the decades from when I was younger, in my estimation, almost every aspect of the infrastructure has declined. The NHS is just one manifestation of that. So it's not surprising to me that they have maternity scandals. Maternity and neonates are the hardest things to deal with in the hospital, arguably, and it's just not surprising to me in the slightest. Using the footballing analogy, Evans was the equivalent of Liverpool beating a no-show team 1-0, only scoring the last minute of injury time, i.e. got the result but unconvincing. Yeah, he's like a stacked team, missing loads of open goals, missing a penalty, and just maybe scoring with an own goal, maybe even going a goal down and coming back to win. He's very, very poor in court, as we're going to see increasingly. I only wish I had the whole court case. I think it's outrageous that we don't make the entire court case available. but we don't. So we have to push for that. The authorities know how bad just about all the maternity units are. CQC reported earlier this year that 2/3 of them are unsafe. That's rather damning in my book. Yes. And bear in mind that I've spoken to a whistleblower and they were very critical of the CQC and said they don't do enough and that they don't. You've heard David Livermore on his channel, Professor David Livermore, microbiologist, talking about the CQC and how they did a very bad job of reviewing the accounts of Chester. So even saying 2/3 were unsafe, that could be a conservative picture, even though, as you rightly say, it's damning. So someone says I'm tired, but I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. It's just, yeah, I was just Kiniko was being very, very distracting, and all of a sudden there was a massive discussion with a troll. So I just got a little bit distracted. I've got my second win now. Don't worry. Yes, if anyone wants to be a moderator or knows how to be a moderator, please email me. I've got some people in mind who I know very well, but I'd like to have some reserves as well. So please do contact me, and I'll try to do this with some regularity. It's been fun to do. I'm not used to listening to my voice non-stop this much, because when I record a video, I pause, make segments. It would be very difficult to do it with the fluency and the quality required, even though I'm confident in my ability to speak about this fluently. But obviously I want to make it as good quality as I can for YouTube. So I don't usually speak non-stop for 2.5 hours now. Didn't Dr. Gibbs say that he was reluctant to go to the police because yes, that's absolutely true. Dr. Gibbs said during the Thurwell inquiry, he wouldn't go to the police because he was present for a lot of the deaths. So that says everything, doesn't it? No one needs to apologize for engaging with the troll. It's not a problem, but that's a lesson learned for today from everyone. Everyone was just trying to show that we're wrong, which is not difficult. But the problem is that it then just, instead of getting questions, all of a sudden I just get like a massive list of people arguing, which it doesn't help. So let's put that down as a lesson learned. I don't mind you talking among yourselves. That's absolutely great. But when it's like a massive wedge of comments, it does make it difficult. Is there any way of obtaining more info on the secret meetings police held with selected journalists? No. There's no way they'll tell us. National security is not at stake, so how can this be open justice, skullduggery? Well, the police have made it very clear that they don't consider themselves to be a publicly accountable organisation. So if you live in Cheshire now, around Chester, in Westchester, they've made it clear. Virtually every police constabulary is a basic courtesy and a basic service to the population runs a Twitter account. Not all of them do, but most do. Cheshire Police did prior to December of last year, and they've just stopped that. The reason they've stopped it, I presume, is because they realised we cannot control the comments as we do on YouTube, where they delete all the comments, as we know. Now, their social media policy, I know for a fact, says that they're supposed to allow reasonable criticism, but obviously they don't. And that's not the only indication we have about Cheshire Police considering themselves to be unaccountable, because they don't answer questions, they don't respond to letters, they don't respond to emails, they don't even release the documents. They quite clearly do not consider themselves to be a publicly accountable organisation, which is obviously A, very worrying for a police constabulary, and B, considering that we pay them money, we fund the police entirely, solely, they should be publicly accountable automatically. You notice that when I said that to Jane Hutton, she agreed immediately, and the police called her in to work with them. That tells you everything. So Elizabeth has said, very sad about the chess player. It is indeed tragic. I was devastated. Even though I wasn't a big follower of him, I know what a good person he was, and it was truly very sad. It's impossible to be accurate read baby deaths in the unit after Lucy was removed because the unit was downgraded, sick babies referred on level 3 units, and extra staff were appointed. Not only is this true, but they knew it was true because of Corinne Slingo's email. So Corinne Slingo sent this email. She's a legal representative. She said it will be very difficult for us to identify the amount of deaths on this unit, whether there's any malfeasance, because we're downgrading and this could put us in a difficult position. So it's not even if we know this after the fact. They knew this at the time. They knew this in 2016, but they didn't take that into consideration. Nothing was taken into consideration. No context was taken into consideration in this case, none whatsoever. Is it true the CCRC have commissioned independent review into their own work? Do you think this has implications for decision on the Lucy Letby case? I don't know the answer to this, but Richard Gill told me they could commission their own independent review and they could get their own experts. Naturally, this would have implications for the decision on the Lucy Letby case, but those decisions could be positive. So I can't answer that definitively, but I know it's a possibility. All right, this is just someone else who's a troll. You recently did a vid on Lucy's character. I've already answered that question, by the way. You recently did a vid on Lucy's character. Have you thought about approaching Dawn? So I did answer this. If I think it's appropriate, I will. I don't know if it's fair to bring it onto video at this point in time. After what I've learned, I would swerve JRAM. If I had to go into that, sorry, I'm just banning someone, apologies. After what I've learned, I would swerve JRAM if I had to go into that hospital, but my baby days are well and truly over. Yeah, I think most people would feel that way, would they not? I think it's very likely that a lot of people would feel uncertain to have Brew and JRAM looking after the child. Yeah, so Nadine Dorries is mentioned here again. If we can get Nadine on, I definitely will. You've done an amazing job, Christopher. Huge respect to you. Thank you very much. Mike Lynch said his money helped with his defence. Without it, he would most likely have been found guilty. Before he died, he was looking to supporting Lucy. I believe that's absolutely true. It's a very great shame that he died, of course. Not only the fact that he died prematurely, but also he would have supported Lucy. So that's a missed opportunity, but nothing we can do about that. We can just bemoan the fact that he died. But it's absolutely true that money helps. Obviously, the classic example of that is the O.J. Simpson case. I try not to refer to that too much because it's hackneyed to talk about it, but he got off because of his money. It's as simple as that. I mean, and then after the trial, I don't know if people know this, but there's loads of videos of him going on and on and on about the case, which he just makes it. He even did this thing. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the interview. Look, it's priceless. Where he does an interview with a journalist, not the most principled journalist in the world, I would suggest. And the subject of the interview is, how would I have killed my ex-wife hypothetically if I was going to do it? And then during that interview, he lapses into, instead of saying I would have done this or I would have done that, he's going, I can see this on the floor. I can see. And he's basically recounting how he did it. I mean, I don't know for sure if that's true. Obviously, I don't know if he's guilty, and I don't even know if it's an unsafe conviction. I didn't follow the case, but I think given if you know some of the details about what happened and him running away and the stuff he had in his car, it doesn't look great for him. And then there was his blood all over the place. But then he did an interview and said, oh, he gave very specific details about the crime scene. It's not looking great for him overall. The trial and its process is hysteria-driven, and it's only Face that didn't stop it or let later exoneration of the process. So it absolutely was hysteria-driven. It's very, very sad that that there was a media furore and a media, it was trialed by media to a certain extent. And, I believe that the police, Peter Hitchens has stated the police deliberately allowed Lucy to be named, and that was their reason for tipping off the media rather, and going through a garden, was that they knew she'd be named and they wanted her name in the press. I don't know if that's true, but Peter Hitchens is a very experienced journalist and a better place to comment than me. So someone says, are we talking crime scene to courtroom? I think that would be great. So I didn't mean crime scene to courtroom. I feel some sympathy for crime scene to courtroom because he's very strongly come down on the side of guilty and he's completely wrong. And now he has to live with that for the rest of his life. And I don't believe him to be a bad person. So I didn't mean him. I meant anyone. If anyone thinks they're credentialed, if anyone thinks they have any qualifications, then they're more than happy to come on the channel and do a pro-guilt interview, and I'll put them up against a panel of experts, and we'll see how they get on. I would say TB has destroyed the country the most. Not quite sure what that refers to. Do you think Manchester City will be found guilty, or do you think they will get off? I think they will get off. I think they'll probably. This is speculation, of course, but I can't imagine them being found completely innocent or completely not guilty of all 115 charges, or now it's more than 115. But in terms of them facing serious censure and serious punishment for what occurred, I think it's going to be extremely difficult. That's a situation in which the defence has way more resources than the prosecution, and it's very, very difficult to make it stick against someone of that power and someone of that money. I mean, just to explain briefly, basically, in this country, a company will sponsor Manchester United, Liverpool, other countries, other clubs, etc., etc. And because we're a democratic country, theoretically, there's a division between the state and corporations, banks that we know are very powerful. And even in this country, quite rightly, there's criticism of the relationships and the cronyism between corporations and banks and the state. I accept it's necessary for them to have a relationship to some extent, perhaps, because they're big employers and so on and so forth. In the Middle East, it's completely different. There is not this separation between state and the owners of the big infrastructure and the banks and the oil. There just is not the same separation at all. So, you can have a prime minister who owns half the country, basically. And they do have very strong relationships with these people. So Manchester City, essentially, they're accused of effectively sponsoring themselves, and that they just created sponsorship deals with companies that are affiliated with the government, and then they're also affiliated with these companies, and they also own Manchester City, and so it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, essentially. Now, I have absolutely no doubt that that's a legitimate criticism, but I think they have very strong lawyers, and they will argue we didn't overvalue it, and you can't prove it, and you can't make it stick, and I think it'll be very difficult for them. So comment about Mike Lynch that I've already responded to. It's been excellent, Chris. Thank you. That's very, very kind of you. The deaths after the downgrade aren't actually correct. It's something to do with the police. I've already addressed that. Is there any update on Lucy Letby in terms of herself and how she feels currently? So I personally don't have an update on this. I've not had contact with Lucy. I think that her well-being is likely to be very similar to what it is now, where she's aware of support for her. She's aware that she has hope. Mark McDonald described it as. I doubt there's any change. I think she'll be very protected in prison. I think she's a survivor. I think she's learning to adapt to what is going on in prison. But I don't think that there will be any update. I don't think she's going to be in better shape. I don't think she's going to be in worse shape. I guess she will be on about a 4 or 5 out of 10 in terms of her mood. Not in complete desperation and desolation, but far from happy and just waiting for things to happen. I would be probably lower than a 4 or 5 because I would feel powerless, and I hate to feel that I can't control my own destiny. That's part of the reason I became a writer, is that I hated having a job. I hate having to have a workplace and be told, you come in at this time, you have lunch at this time, you go home at this time, and you're here all day, and that's it. Thank God I made that decision, because it was a great decision. But we're all different. I'm sure it's horrible for Lucy, but I think that will be a current state. So there's a comment about crime scenes courtroom not having any knowledge. So I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I haven't watched enough of his videos to be sure. Lucy Letby is strong, and she's a strong Capricorn star sign, and they're very strong personalities. I completely agree that she's strong. I think she's a very strong person. Karen Rees said that she was strong. I think there's a good chance she's going to come out and be okay. I understand these comments about, her life has been ruined, and certainly a lot of her young life has been taken away, and that is a tragedy. But we can't change that. All we can do is do the best that we possibly can and try to help her. And I believe she's strong. And I know we're going to get her a lot of money so that she never has to deal with anything like this ever again. And she never has to worry about money, and she can just go forward and know that that's one thing she doesn't have to worry about. I do believe she can have happiness in front of her. I do believe she can have fulfillment in front of her. She will definitely face very big challenges. Yeah, I'd love to do an interview with Cheshire Police. That's not going to happen. Nina Modi state that most of the babies at the indictment shouldn't have been at the Council of Chester. Absolutely correct. There's no doubt that she's correct. So many people have said to me, many of these babies should have been born at a tertiary unit. It's been cited by the neonatologists in the report. It's been cited by neonatal experts that I've spoken with. It's been cited by doctors that I've spoken with. Very, very clear that some of these infants, at the very least, should have been born at a tertiary unit. Of course, just to clarify once again, this was not a tertiary unit. This was a crap level 2 unit that's been downgraded to a level 1 unit, remains a level 1 unit. So any babies that should have been born on a tertiary unit face big problems. And it's hardly surprising their outcomes weren't great. With Professor Arthur's, we have the ephemeral study. It's not published, it's seemingly gone, where it's been used in a criminal multiple murder trial. Will it be able to be used again? Oh, very doubtful, because I mean, to be honest, it sounds interesting and it should be published. I guess if it was published, then it possibly could be used. There might be a push. I mean, academics want to know the truth about stuff. That's why all these people are in the defense. That's why I can bring people on this channel, because they care about the truth. Like, I know several people very well. I mean, nurses are the same. Nursing is like a search for truth. You want to know the truth about an infant because you need to know the truth because you need to treat it properly. That's what all of these people are doing. I know people, like I know Michelle quite well now. I know Richard Gill quite well. I know how passionate they are about the field, and not just about something being unjust, but about intellectual honesty and about the truth coming out. I know how passionate they are about it, and I know how passionate other people are who you haven't heard from yet, or I maybe don't know as well. So it's possible they could push for it to be published so that it could be used in the future, or at least it could be assessed so that they could look at its intellectual and academic validity. So there's a possibility it could be published in the future, and then it could then be used, or even more so than being used in murder trials, it could be used to say, look, as it should have been used in this trial, that you get air in the great vessels, you get air in infants. It happens. It happens with regularity. That it's more a source that could be used to stop a trial from occurring. So that could happen. I don't know. It's very hard to say, but it probably should happen. Chris, I'm very impressed with your channel and your efforts in Lucy's behalf. I don't know what use an American can be in this instance, but I believe in the character and innocence. So what I would say, well, first I should say thank you. I'm very grateful. I mean, I think it's fantastic to hear that when I have international followers. So I have quite a decent following now in America, a very good following in Australia. That's my second biggest, even more than Ireland. I have quite a good following in Ireland, and also Canada. Naturally, the English-speaking countries, it makes sense, doesn't it? But yeah, please, just by being here, if you can talk to people, if you can get more people to do it. One thing that none of you know is that I've worked closely with an American on this channel and on my work. So there are people, I want to make this international eventually. And there's possible ways to do that. I've got some ideas. I will try to do that. But yeah, any American or any country where people are watching this, following this, interested in this, speaking about this, publicizing this is important. So anything you can do to talk about it, get other people to talk about it, raise awareness is very important. There is naturally always going to be a focus in this case on Britain. That's inevitable. But I mean, I very much appreciate, there's an American nurse who comments regularly. I have many Australian people who comment. Very much appreciate that. We mustn't allow the judiciary to go away with pinning it all on evidence. I agree. Yes, he's a charlatan, but if the expert witness system was fit for purpose, Evans wouldn't have seen the inside of a courtroom. Correct. And of course, there are other failings elsewhere. So I absolutely agree with your comment. OJ, money and race politics, it was just after the Rodney King assault. Absolutely correct. Race was a major factor in this case. Why are Hummingbird hiring? I don't have the answer to that question, but who knows what the police are doing. They may be trying to have more investigations. We've seen from the documentary they've upset this couple who had the box for absolutely no reason. Michelle's going to be discussing that in depth next week. Who knows what the hell they're doing, Claire? Who knows? I wish I knew. I'd like to see a live studio debate on the Lucy Letby case, something on the lines of Kilroy Question Time, but it can't be on the BBC, that's for sure. But it would be great. I don't think any TV station has the guts to do that at the moment, but we will work on getting more stuff on TV for sure. I'm not a human mother, just a pet mom who adapted to rescues. Thank you for doing that. I love people that adopt rescue dogs. I watched this channel where it's called The Dodo. If you love dogs, you should watch that. You see some dogs in some very distressing circumstances and people nursing them back to health. It's very moving. One is a kitten and the other a young mother who cat rescued from streets. Okay, so they're cats, but I still love cats. I can't go near cats because Keeks is a hunter, so she wouldn't hurt them, but she loves to chase after them. So we don't have a lot of cat interaction, but I do like cats. Let's go a bit further down. Why right, let's just go further down. Sorry, there's just a point about Manchester City. That's a great point. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I might be wrong. They should face consequences, really, but then at the same time, you could argue that it's not really fair because the biggest clubs that generate the rest of the revenue can just spend it, and other clubs can't. But the thing people have to understand is they literally have unlimited funds. So if there wasn't some sort of measure in place to prevent them from spending, they could spend £1 billion on transfers every year if they wanted to. Nothing's going to stop them. Look at the stupid money they've spent in Saudi Arabia on this league that no one watches. So that Manchester City could do that every week, every season if they wanted to. So there have to be some measures in place. If I live nearer to you, Chris, I'd buy you a drink. That's very kind. If anyone sees me, by the way, I'm going to be in some public places in future. Please do come and say hello because, of course, I won't necessarily recognise you. I hope to meet some of you at some point. I will. Someone I mentioned previously that I'd like to do a picnic, and then someone mentioned Hyde Park. So I'm going to look into the feasibility of that for next year because I will still be doing content, no doubt. That's baked into the cake, unfortunately. I hope I'm not doing this 10 years from now, but if I have to do this at 10 years from now, I will. But yeah, I'd like to hold a picnic next year in Hyde Park. So I do plan to do that. And if people who think Lucy's guilty want to come, you're very welcome. Like I can face people face to face. It's not a problem for me. But yeah, there will be. If I feel I can do that and I feel it is feasible, then London seems the best place. Maybe I could hold one somewhere else as well. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so I'd love to meet some of you face to face. I'm sure I will over time. I've met people previously, so thank you for that comment. I'm a lightweight, by the way, so you can't buy me many drinks. It's okay. Is it okay to speak at length about dogs? What breed is your dog? Hope you don't mind me asking. So Kiko is half Staffy, half Mastiff, so she's a crossbreed. If you look at Rhodesian Ridgeback, she looks very much like a Rhodesian Ridgeback, but she's not a Rhodesian Ridgeback. I'll try and show you at the end of the stream. I'll get her up right at the end. I mean, I'm coming to the point where I should stop now because I said 3 hours, and I'm starving, to be honest. So I will stop soon. Let's say I'll stop at 10:15. I'll see how many questions I can answer in the last 15 minutes. So let's go a bit further down. So I'll just block this person again. It's pretty annoying. So yeah, next time I'll have mods, so I don't have to do that. Just giving a shout out for the New Yorker article. I believe this was a turning point. So for people who don't know, Clercy from Trial of Lucy Letby, she was the researcher for that, and she was the person who referred the case to Rachel Aviv, who wrote the article. So Clercy is one of the people who's most responsible for the raising of awareness in this case. I haven't spoken to her for a while because she's ever so busy going all over the world, but I do know her quite well now. So she's one of the amazing people that I've met. I'm very grateful to call a friend who's a brilliant journalist. And I suppose a second thing, apart from what I already mentioned, I met some brilliant people through doing this. The other thing that I would mention is that my faith in journalism has been restored a bit because I've got to know a few people, a few journalists from various newspapers, and I think the response has been very encouraging, given there are numerous newspapers now that will print pro-Lucy stuff, and a few that are definitively pro-Lucy. And there've been several shining examples of journalists who are doing stuff, and I'll give them enormous credit for that. And Clercy is one of those, and Clercy is a brilliant person, a brilliant human being, and a brilliant journalist, and I have the utmost respect for her. So I don't think she'll ever see this, so our ears don't need to burn too much. So Jenny says, I'm the American nurse you mentioned who comments regularly. Thank you for helping out my fellow nurse, Lucy. So thank you for your comments. They're always very helpful and illustrative, and you provide the knowledge that I don't have and the insight that I don't have. And all nurses, all healthcare professionals, I have expert witnesses commenting. I have many experts commenting, and I'm so grateful for that because, this has been Christ, I've actually done a degree. They've done the equivalent easily of a degree course and a master's by now. So I've learned so much, and that's only from people that know a lot more than me who've been able to share stuff. So thank you for your comments, Jenny. Thank you for what you've done in nursing, and thank you for being interested in this case. Apparently, the documentary maker said the parents who took part told their child was a mistake. The child wasn't meant to hear it. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's interesting to know. Let's go a bit further down. Oh, I think I'm at the bottom. I think I'm actually at the bottom of the messages. So like Bonnie is here. So I think that's a beautiful name that you have. So it's nice that you're here. Thank you for all your comments and support. I really appreciate it. The jury should never have been given the option of majority verdict. I agree. So I think I cut this out of my book in the end, but I was going to highlight some examples of majority verdicts resulting in miscarriages of justice, but it's known that when there's majority verdict, it's more likely that there'll be a miscarriage of justice. I heard Mount McDonald is using Maitland PR to help. Perhaps they could do more, or do we just need to wait for the CCRC? So I've actually met a gentleman from Maitland PR. I won't name him because I don't know if he wants me to name him or not, but he gave me his card actually. And they're very much aware of what's going on. They're not just there in a PR role. They're doing whatever they can to help. They're very aware. This gentleman is very much aware of Lucy's innocence and of this being an unsafe conviction. He's very clued up on the case. He's very clued up on other cases. So I can confirm that. I don't know what else they can do. I know they're doing everything that they can. You're definitely the doctor of philosophy by the end of this stream. Well, I'm coming to account with so many interesting people, have so many opinions on so many things. So, I obviously have an opinion on various things. I'm a writer first and foremost, so I always like to focus on my writing and research. My ability and my speciality is to drill. I think of it as like an orange. unpeel an orange and then pulp it until there's nothing left. So I just like to bleed a topic dry and then put it in my book so that it's, the best research that's been done, and that's what I intended to do. I do like a bit of philosophizing as well. I did enjoy. I got to that point where you knew me a little bit, and I thought, okay, I can give a bit more of myself. So, I'm quite shy, to be honest. Obviously, as you get older, you become more accustomed to it, and I'm definitely an introvert. I think to be a writer, you must be an introvert. So, for me to be a public figure, even in this very minor way, is a strange experience. But I'm getting more used to it, and I'm used to it now. And it's 99.9% positive. But of course, there's a little 0.1% thing of getting used to my name being known. It's a bit strange. So when I made that video, I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to tell people stuff about myself? And I thought, yeah, I do, because people will want to know a little bit, and you need to show a bit of courage. So I did, and yeah, I do like to philosophize about things, and I do like to talk about other topics when I can a little bit. And I think as well, when I'm making videos, if it's all just relentlessly, Lucy was innocent, look at how terrible it was, it can be a bit grim. And I do try and get a bit of humor in there, and I do try and get a bit of lighter stuff in there, and I do try and get a bit of topics. I mean, I think my whole video amused a few people, so that's good. It's always, so let me tell you about one of the difficult things of being a YouTuber and being a little bit of a public figure and people talking and so on and so forth. I try and keep it as I try and keep it as balanced as possible, as neutral as possible. I try not to get into political topics, try not to get into contentious subjects. But at the same time, I've got to offer an opinion on something sometimes, and I've got to have faith in myself to think I will do the channel this way. I believe this to be right. That's what I'm going to do. So, like the other day, 90% of the comments I got back about taking the piss out of Liz were positive. Someone even said I can't drink a cup of tea because I splatter it all over the place. And I always like to make people laugh. That's one of the things I'm good at. So I do enjoy doing that. But then a couple of people said, "Oh, you're too strong in your comments. You shouldn't make fun of people. You should, keep it factual." And I obviously, as you know, I try to keep it very factual. So it's always difficult. And then I made a comment about Nigel Farage, and I'm certainly not a supporter of him politically. But I just said, I think anyone with a public platform saying anything positive is good. End of story, as far as I'm concerned. Unless they're so discredited that it's bad. And some people didn't like that because they don't like Nigel Farage. I completely understand why they don't. And I'm not taking sides either way. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't vote for him. I'm not saying you should. I don't want a political platform, but that is where it can be very difficult to, you say something, then 90% of people say, "Oh, that's great." And then 10% of people say it's not. So there's an amazing video of Bill Hicks talking about this. He's being interviewed by BBC Two not long before he died. And they're saying, "Do you try and censor things for your audience?" And he's saying, "What am I supposed?" Half of the audience come up to me and go, "That was great," and half of the audience got to me and say, "You're evil." What do I do? Am I supposed to? And people say to me, you should do things that appeal to everyone. I'm like, that's impossible. No one's ever done that in the history of the human race. How on earth can I do that? So it's a fascinating interview. Only lasts 5 minutes that you could watch as well. But yeah, so these are some of the little balances and some of the little things that you have to deal with. But yeah, I mean, I can't express enough my gratitude to people. I wish I could come and meet everyone, but hopefully I'll meet more of you as this goes on. And you've made me feel very appreciated. And I mean, I didn't ever anticipate being a YouTuber. But another thing I want to say is that while I remember, this channel will go on forever. So I feel I can make lots of content in the future once Lucy's out. Firstly, once Lucy's out of prison, the next job is to begin campaigning for reform the criminal justice system, for all of the actors who should face consequences to face proper consequences, and for Lucy to receive proper compensation and monetary remuneration. So by that time, I don't know how big my voice is going to be, but it's already not entirely trivial, I would say. So hopefully by then it'll be bigger. If it's bigger, then I'll use it. But regardless of the size, I will use it. So that's the first thing. I'll continue doing that, and then I'll make other content. I mean, I feel like I know my community well enough, and I don't want to say like, right, I've done my Lucy Letby bit. Bye, you'll never see me again. I feel like I know you well enough now to carry on going. So, I'll try and make other relevant content, and maybe I'll even test the water and do stuff that is not relevant or that is not immediately relevant to this case. But obviously, while Lucy is incarcerated, my focus will be entirely on Lucy Letby, and all my content will be directly related to Lucy. If she was charged on something else, which touch wood hopefully won't happen, I would revert to talking about miscarriage of justice, doing miscarriage of justice content. And when Lucy comes out, then I will continue doing content until I can't breathe anymore. That's my plan, because I enjoy doing this. I mean, writing is my first love, but I've come to enjoy doing this, and it's a beautiful thing to have people supporting you and to have. I mean, I love seeing the comments and I love responding. That's why I decided if I ever had a YouTube channel, I'm going to respond to as many comments as I can. So I think I must be crazy, to be honest, because I respond to probably 300 comments a day, every day. I take a day off sometimes and don't do as many, but I think I must respond to 80 to 90% of the comments, and I get 200, 300 a day probably. So I'm doing at least 200 a day, I think. But I want to do that out of respect to people that have supported me. And I want to tell people something else as well while I'm on that you don't know. So I could have got 500 quid from YouTube for free because I could have enabled memberships on the channel. Because once you get to a certain level, they start sending you stuff. So they sent me a promotion for that. They sent me other promotions. They said, "Oh, come to this YouTube Creators Day in London." And like, that's going to be great, isn't it? Like me, loads of kids there who want to be influencers, who've got channels like me going, I'm defending a convicted serial killer. How can you help me? But so surprisingly, I'm not going to go to that open day. And then there's other, but I haven't turned any of these things on, and I'm not going to turn any of these things on because I don't feel comfortable with having memberships to the channel, because I want to give everyone everything for free, firstly, and then I really don't have any more to give than I'm giving already. So I can't give members anything extra. It's just not possible. And then I don't want to hold stuff back and then give that to members. I want to give everyone everything. So I didn't enable memberships, which I could have done. And they gave you a pretty sizable bonus. It's the first time in my life I've ever turned down something for free. And definitely the first time where it was a significant amount of money, but I just said, I can't do that. So yes, I'm enormously grateful for all the support. I feel I should go on and answer some more questions now. So I've got 2 minutes. I love that you love Philip K. Dick. Yeah, he's an amazing writer. Amazing. As a retired healthcare professional, it's frightening what I witnessed in the toxic culture. I hope this case will be a catalyst for change. So do I. I think the anonymity orders really need analysis. I agree. There were far too many. It's completely ridiculous. It should never have happened. What an absolute joke. Which documentary is the best on Lucy Letby? Undoubtedly Anouk's documentary. So I know Anouk not super well, but I know her. I hope to bring her on the contract if she's able, the channel, if she's able to do it. But definitely the ITV documentary that Clancy did some work on as well. Hi, Chris, I'm late. We'll watch the stream back later, but just to say for now, thank you for all of your amazing work. Thank you so much for your support. I'm very grateful. I hope publishing this online works because this might be my first try. How the expectation of criminal case in court should be open court. Anonymity should be used where there's a threat to life or national security. I agree. There needs to be a very good reason for anonymity. And of course, court proceedings should be made public property, as I've argued previously. How about John Sweeney? So I'll get John Sweeney if I can. I think it's possible, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Something I realized the other day is that when Wayne Squire, so you may know Wayne Squire, who spoke about shaken baby syndrome, when she was on the BBC talking about shaken baby syndrome, John Sweeney was the person who interviewed her. I didn't realize that until the other day. And I saw her talking about it. And I thought, hold on, that's John Sweeney. So he must feel devastated about what's happening with Panorama. I know that he does. So yeah, it must be very difficult for him. To be honest, I'm surprised you only have 3+ UK subscribers. The amount of people who speak. Yeah, it's not easy to get subscribers. So there's been some controversy recently with YouTube not showing the videos to as many people for very big creators. So I don't know if that's affecting me. I don't worry about it because I get at the moment I get 30,000 watch hours a month, roughly. That's extraordinary. I never thought that was possible. Of course, I would love to get more, and I'd love to have more people subscribed. Maybe one day I will. But it's going. I mean, I never thought I'd get to this point now. I'll just keep making content, and I'm very grateful for the support that I have. No paywalls, you're a rare soul. Well, it's very important to me to do this ethically. So I may have a Patreon at some point, but at the moment that's under review, and I don't have any plans to have one currently. I hope the channel can build, but I think to do that, you'd have to run 15-minute edits. So the problem is, if I do 15-minute videos, YouTube doesn't necessarily show them to more people than it does now. I have no control over the number of people that YouTube will show the video to, and it's almost impossible to predict what YouTube will do. Occasionally, a video goes viral or more viral, and I don't know why, and there's no way for me to know why. But what I do know is that I looked up the trending videos on YouTube recently, and I don't usually bother because it's not very helpful, but I noticed that Lucy Letby Analysis was one of the biggest. So that's a bit of a testimony, I suppose, to what I've achieved. So I think I can give myself a little pat on the back for that. You're a powerhouse on the comments, Chris. It's impressive. Well, thank you, but I'm a writer. It's my job. I can rattle through writing. Don't worry. You are a rare soul, and thank you for all you're doing. It's my pleasure. Do Doe's Dream of Electric Expert Panels, title of your book. So that's a reference to Philip K. Dick for people who don't know. Do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep that was made into Blade Runner. So one of the sad stories about Philip K. Dick was he's, in my view, the greatest writer who ever lived. Both his quality's up there with anyone. Like I think the greatest prose writer ever is Chekhov. But taking everything into account, Philip K. Dick for me is the greatest writer ever lived. But then his quantity was unbelievable. So to produce this quantity, this quality, and the imagination and the perceptiveness of what he did. So I think he was closer to getting the modern society 50, 60 years ago in America in the 1950s when they were telling everyone, oh, when we have corporations running everything, it'll be a dream come true and you'll barely have to do any work. And he could see what was going to happen, and he absolutely documented it in a way that can only be described as pure genius. And I won't defer to many people and say, that guy's a better writer than me, that guy's cleverer than me, that guy's definitely a better writer than me, and he's definitely cleverer than me, that guy's a genius. The sad thing about his life was, despite the fact he's a genius writer, he lived in poverty all of his life. He lived in abject poverty because writing fiction for a living and doing nothing else about science fiction in America in the 1950s is not easy. So he was very poor, and he just signed the Blade Runner deal. Apparently, he really got ripped off on the Blade Runner deal, but it was like money he'd never seen before in his life, hundreds of thousands, obviously. And then he died. So he died, and he never really got to enjoy the money. And since then, countless films, like he would have got millions for Man in the High Castle, for example, that was on Netflix, but many, many others, and he would have died very, very rich. He never got to see any of it. Sweeney goes back to when the BBC had decent investigative journalists. Agree. Christopher, you're not here for trophies. Good as you will be in line with the Cheshire Constabulary. Yeah. I admire your commitment to proving Lucy's innocence, Chris. Thank you. Give everything that I can for as long as I can. Always be able to receive Lucy's innocence in the future will be a big part of riding the white wigs. Fair comment. TikTok and YouTube Shorts will drive traffic to the channel in no time. So yeah, that's definitely helped, I think. But the main thing was to try and connect with younger people. And I think it's helped with that. Farage is a big deal, not because he's a big deal. He is, but he has sensed the direction of travel. Good comment. I agree. It's the most positive recent development I'm aware of. So yeah, hopefully is an indicative of that. I'm a UK subscriber. Yeah, good to hear from you. Thanks for this live stream. My absolute pleasure. Thanks for everyone for being here. Lisa Rogers waves. Hello, Lisa. John Sweeney is better away from the BBC. I absolutely agree. We nurses must support each other. Super live, Chris, thanks. Chris, I can't believe it's over 3 hours. The time has flown. The stream has been excellent. I need to go. Thank you. I'm going to go in a couple of minutes. I'm nearly caught up. Stitch up job. Very sad ending for Philip K. Dick. Very true. Question, I'm watching this with my 84-year-old father on the main TV. Can you just give us a shout out to Alf and Jonathan just to mess with his head, please? Hello to Alf and Jonathan. That's the kind of thing you can do with modern technology now. I can remember when Channel 4 came out, when there were only 3 channels. I can remember when Channel 4 was good as well. Let's all share some emojis on here to show we all appreciate Chris doing this live. You can do that if you wish. Please support the Darlington nurses too, everyone, please. Yes. That's very important. So I've reached it to the end. I've got to the end of the comment section. Of course, there are more comments now, but I'm going to stop there because I've just about dealt with all the comments, apart from the section where we're dealing with a troll. So next time I'll try and have mods. And if I say ban this person, then I'm Caesar, and that person has to go. So yeah, thank you so much for everyone for joining us. Thank you for the support for the channel. Thank you for everything you're doing for Lucy. I wanted you to understand we will win this war, if you want to call it a war. Lucy will be exonerated. Lucy will come out of prison. This is inevitable. It's just a timeline of when it's going to happen. As long as I could have breath in my body, I'll fight for it and I'll do everything that I possibly can. There's going to be a lot of big stuff coming soon. There's a lot of great stuff coming for the channel, so I can't wait to show you all of that. And my next video will be on Friday. There'll be a video on Sunday, then Michelle's interview will probably come on Tuesday. So thank you all for being here, and I'll speak to you all soon. If indeed I know how to end the stream, which I presume is this red button here. So thank you for being here, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Have a good evening, what's left of it.